Chapter 42. Although it was the first time for Tan Xiu to shake the dice, but his memory was good, and his learning ability was amazing. Tang Xiu only carefully observed Jia Ruidao's movements when he shook the dice once, and then copied Jia Ruidao's technique. In the beginning, Tan Xiu's imitation of Jia Ruidao's movements and techniques was a bit jerky. But slowly he became more and more skilled, and his movements and techniques almost became a copy of Jia Ruidao's. Jia Ruidao didn't put Tan Xiu in his heart. He also didn't think much of Tan Xiu's movements and techniques. But when he found that Tan Xiu's movements and techniques were getting more and more familiar, he finally couldn't help but exclaim out loud. One must know that Jia Ruidao had pondered and perfected for more than 30 years, and only then did he gradually form his own unique skill. But Tan Xiu only looked at it once, and he was able to learn 70% of his unique skill. This made Jia Ruidao doubt whether his decades of pondering was in vain or not. Although Jia Ruidao had received several apprentices and also taught his own unique skill to his apprentices, he could be sure that even his apprentices couldn't learn his unique skill so thoroughly, let alone his several good-for-nothing grand-disciples. Looking at a stranger displaying his unique skill in front of him, an indescribable feeling welled up in Jia Ruidao's heart, but it was hard for him to describe it. This kid is an outsider, and he obviously just came into contact with this circle. His perception is so strong. If I accept him as my apprentice, wouldn't it mean that I have a successor? Suddenly, this thought emerged in Jia Ruidao's mind, and then it couldn't be stopped. When Jia Ruidao changed his attitude towards Tan Xiu, he found that Tan Xiu was more and more pleasing to the eye. Although Tan Xiu's clothes were a bit plain, they were very clean and tidy. His short black hair made him look particularly spirited. Coupled with his bright and piercing eyes, his high-nose bridge, thin lips, and tall and straight figure, he gave off a kind of handsome and compelling feeling. When the other people in the room heard Jia Ruidao's exclamation, they felt baffled. Other people didn't know that gambling experts had their own unique skills. In their opinion, everyone's movements when shaking the dice were almost the same. They didn't seriously remember Jia Ruidao's movements when he shook the dice. They also didn't know that Tan Xiu's movements when he shook the dice were surprisingly similar to Jia Ruidao's movements. A few minutes later, the dice cup in Tang Xiu's hand was turned upside down on the table. Beads of sweat oozed out from his forehead. At the same time, a tired look was revealed on his face, mixed with a bit of nervousness. Although Tan Xiu had tried his best and had also digested and absorbed 90% of Jia Ruidao's unique skill, but a lot of things were accumulated over time and experience, and not something that could be learned with just a glance. Tan Xiu could completely copy Jia Ruidao's technique when shaking the dice, but he didn't have the means to copy Jia Ruidao's unique skill of using his ears to distinguish the number of the dice. The reason why Tan Xiu's shaking time was much longer than Jia Ruidao's. On one hand, he was looking for the feeling of shaking the dice, so that he could be more skilled in shaking the dice. On the other hand, he was listening to the sound of the dice rolling inside the dice cup. He tried to use the subtle changes in the sound to confirm the number of the dice. Open it, open it. Now that the dice cup has fallen, the result has already been determined. Even if you don't open it, it won't affect the result. Seeing that Tan Xiu was pressing the dice cup for a long time, Zhang Yongjin anxiously urged from the side. Tan Xiu didn't pay attention to Zhang Yongjin. Instead, he wiped the sweat from the corner of his eyes and slowly opened the dice cup. In the process of opening the dice cup, Tan Xiu had a nervous look on his face. Even his right hand that was holding the dice cup was slightly trembling. Ah, 1 point, just 1 point. I'm dying of laughter. With this luck, you can go out and buy a lottery ticket. When Tang Xiu completely opened the dice cup, Zhang Yongjin couldn't help but burst into laughter. Xuerenfei and Huanjun also couldn't help but ridicule Tang Xiu. Zhang Deqin and Jia Ruidao were subconsciously relieved. Previously, Zhang Deqin and Jia Ruidao were worried that Tan Xiu was a hidden gambling master among the common people and that they would fail miserably in this gamble. But when Tan Xiu opened the dice cup, the doubts in their hearts disappeared, and their hearts also fell to the ground. Did I lose? When Tan Xiu saw the bright red, his eyes couldn't help but flash a touch of frustration. Brother Tang, it's nothing. There are still 2 more chances. Although Long Jingyu was discouraged in his heart, he could see that Tan Xiu had tried his best. So, he didn't speak out to accuse or complain, but rather, he softly consoled him from the side. "Boss, don't be discouraged. The final winner will definitely be you." Long Jinglin was also full of confidence. Seeing that the Long brothers still believed in Tan Xiu at this time, Zhang Deqin's eyes couldn't help but flash a touch of doubt. She couldn't help but look at Tan Xiu. Zhang Yongjin and the other two naturally couldn't help but ridicule. "Little brother, do you still want to continue?" Jia Ruidao stared at Tan Xiu for a moment, and then asked with a smile. "Grandmaster Jia, please." Hearing the change in Jia Ruidao's tone when he spoke to him, Tan Xiu was surprised for a moment, and then immediately greeted him with a different form of address. This time, Jia Ruidao's movement of shaking the dices was very slow, and he also reduced a lot of fancy movements. At the same time, the dices in the dice cup suddenly made a sound. Upon seeing this, Tan Xiu's eyes couldn't help but shine. He subconsciously looked at Jia Ruidao, and found that Jia Ruidao was vaguely winking at him. Moreover, the other party's gaze was also full of appreciation. Tan Xiu immediately understood that Jia Ruidao was intentionally showing goodwill to him. Although he didn't know why Jia Ruidao would have such a change, but Tan Xiu knew that this was absolutely a good thing for him. Therefore, he began to carefully listen to the changes in the dice's sound inside the dice cup. The second gamble was a lot more difficult compared to the first gamble. In the first gamble, there was only one dices inside the dice cup, but in the second gamble, the dices inside the dice cup had increased to 3. Distinguishing the sound of one dices was easy, but distinguishing the sound of 3 dices at the same time was actually several times more difficult. If it was replaced by an ordinary person, they naturally wouldn't listen to the sound to distinguish the dice's point size, let alone control the dice's point size inside the dice cup. After shaking the dice cup a few times, they would invert it on the table and then leave it to fate. Jia Ruidao wasn't an ordinary person, he was a professional gambler. His professional ethics didn't allow him to be perfunctory. Therefore, he was very seriously distinguishing the rolling and colliding sounds of the dices inside the dice cup, and at the same time, he was controlling the changes in the dice's points through the shaking of his wrist. However, this time, Jia Ruidao didn't put down the dice cup, but had been observing the changes in Tan Xiu's complexion. When Jia Ruidao found that Tan Xiu's complexion had become relaxed, and his eyes also revealed a relieved look, he put down the dice cup. After Jia Ruidao opened the inverted dice cup, the final points of the 3 dices were displayed. Impressively, it was 5, 5, 6, and the total number of the dices was 16. Seeing that Jia Ruidao didn't get 18 points, Zhang Deqin's face couldn't help but flash a touch of worry. Even the Zhang Yongjin trio was also nervous. But thinking of Tan Xiu's rookie gambling skills, they immediately felt relieved. Although Grandmaster Jia didn't get the full points, but it wasn't far from the full points. Tan Xiu could only rely on his luck to determine the number of points. Relying on luck to get the full points was too slim. Zhang Deqin and others didn't believe that Tan Xiu could rely on luck to get the full points. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if Grandmaster Jia lost to Tan Xiu, both sides would still be tied. There was still a third round to determine the outcome. Tan Xiu couldn't rely on luck to win against Grandmaster Jia, right? After nodding to Jia Ruidao, Tan Xiu also picked up the dice cup and dices, and then started his second round. Through the first round of adaptation and training, Tan Xiu's movement of shaking the dices had obviously become a lot more proficient and faster. Therefore, he put more of his energy into distinguishing the changes of the dices inside the dice cup. Tan Xiu only shook it for more than a minute before he put down the dice cup, making everyone in the room surprised. "Kid, you won't give up, right?" Remembering that Jia Ruidao shook the dice cup for a full 5 minutes before stopping, while Tan Xiu only shook it for less than a minute, Zhang Yongjin naturally didn't think that Tan Xiu's gambling skills were better than Jia Ruidao's. Rather, he thought that Tan Xiu didn't want to continue to put on an act. Grandmaster Jia's strength has already deterred him. He can't not give up. "Kid, you finally have self-awareness. Your gambling skills are not as good as others. It's useless for you to shake the dices for a long time. It's better to rely on luck. This way, It's better to finish it quickly, so as to not waste everyone's time. When Shui Renfei, Hu Wanjun, and Zhang Deqin saw Tan Xiu's action, they were stunned for a moment and then subconsciously ridiculed him. The next moment, everyone in the room stared at him with their eyes wide open. Zhang Deqin and Zhang Yongjin's faces were flushed red. Shui Renfei, Hu Wanjun, and Jia Ruidao's eyes were filled with disbelief. Because the moment Tan Xiu opened the dice cup, the dice points inside the dice cup were clearly displayed in front of everyone. 5, 6, 6, a total of 17 points, just a little more than Jia Ruidao's previous 16 points. Won? We actually won? Although Long Zhengyu was comforting Tan Xiu before, in fact, he didn't have too much hope for Tan Xiu. But the long-established etiquette and self-cultivation made him choose to comfort Tan Xiu instead of blaming and complaining. Boss, I know you can do it. Brother, do you believe my words now? The first half of Long Zhenglin's sentence was said to Tan Xiu, but the second half was said to Long Zhengyu. At this time, Long Zhenglin was dancing with joy like a child. After repeatedly confirming that the dice points inside the dice cup in front of Tan Xiu were 17 points, and that his eyes weren't playing tricks on him, Long Zhengyu finally sobered up from the huge shock. He vigorously waved his fist and then hugged his younger brother as tears of excitement flowed out from his eyes. Because the Walled Hill Village project was too important for Long Zhengyu. Whether this step could be taken or not, it was directly related to Long Zhengyu's entire life plan. Therefore, for this project, he racked his brains and racked his brains, spending nearly 3 years from start to finish. If this project was suddenly intercepted by someone else, Long Zhengyu didn't know whether he could face the outcome of failure or not. This was also the reason why he begged people everywhere, and finally, he even believed his younger brother's words and asked an outsider to help him. Your fucking luck is really good. I don't believe that you can win next time. After being silent for a long time, Zhang Yongjin spoke with a sour tone. But this time, Zhang Yongjin's words obviously didn't have the same confidence as before. No one else echoed him, because the others were still immersed in the shock of Tan Xiu's 17 points and hadn't sobered up. Chapter 43. Mr. Jia, please. Tan Xiu smiled at Jia Ruidao and once again made a gesture to invite him to fight. Regarding Jia Ruidao, Tan Xiu is very grateful. If it wasn't for Jia Ruidao deliberately slowing down the speed of shaking the dice, revealing a lot of key points, Tan Xiu certainly wouldn't be able to grasp the real skill of shaking the dice so quickly. Jia Ruidao threw a peach, and Tan Xiu returned the favor. The two people's eye contact is just a matter of a moment. Outsiders simply can't see the subtle changes in the relationship between the two. After all, Jia Ruidao was invited by Zhang Deqin at a high price to deal with the Long's dining hall. If he is too intimate with Tan Xiu, if he wins against the Long's dining hall, everything will be fine, but if he loses to the Long's dining hall, people will definitely misunderstand that there is something fishy going on in the gambling house. Jia Ruidao nodded towards Tan Xiu, and then picked up the dice cup again, starting the third gamble between the two of them. This time, Jia Ruidao put 5 dice into the dice cup. The moment the dice cup shook, Jia Ruidao's eyes flashed with a touch of brilliance, and then his wrist shook in a very rhythmic manner. Only a burst of schwa 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 sound was heard, followed by a burst of muffled bang 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 sound, followed by a burst of sharp d sound. The 5 dice collided with each other in the dice cup for a while. Sometimes, they collided neatly into a certain spot in the dice cup. Sometimes, they collided randomly in all directions. These sounds that should have been messy actually converged into a cheerful and bright melody. So gambling can also be played like this? Feeling the intense fighting intent emitting from Jia Ruidao's body, Tan Xiu's eyes lit up, and the way he looked at Jia Ruidao also became fiery. Tan Xiu can see that Jia Ruidao didn't intend to throw the game just because he appreciated his ability, but decided to go all out. This was also the situation that Tan Xiu was most willing to see. Admittedly, Jia Ruidao was feeling lonely at the top. After suddenly encountering an opponent, he became excited. But how could Tan Xiu not want to challenge his own limits? He wanted to experience the true joy of gambling instead of winning through others' modesty. Under the shaking of Jia Ruidao's wrist, the dice cup was just like a butterfly flying through the flowers, dancing in the air. The naked eyes were completely unable to see the traces of the dice cup. Everyone could only see the beautiful arcs as well as the confident and calm smile on Jia Ruidao's face. The people inside the house obviously didn't expect that Jia Ruidao would have this kind of unique skill. Listening to the dice cup music suddenly resounding inside the house, all of them were stunned. This was a very strange feeling, because no one had ever imagined that the sound of shaking dice could be so pleasing to the ear, full of melody. Almost everyone was staring at Jia Ruidao's movements with rapt attention. Along with the shaking of his wrist, they couldn't help but nod. Everyone's face revealed an intoxicated look. For fear of disturbing Jia Ruidao's rhythm, the people inside the house didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Their eyes were wide open as they held their breath and motionlessly enjoyed the wonderful journey brought by Jia Ruidao. Time passed by unknowingly. Only when a muffled bang sound was heard did everyone sober up from their intoxication. Looking up, they saw that Jia Ruidao had already finished shaking the dice cup and put the dice cup upside down on the table. Grandmaster Jia is really amazing. This is the real gambling. Those gambling masters we saw before are simply too weak. The gambling king is indeed the gambling king. Even shaking the dice can give people a pleasant feeling. Almost when Jia Ruidao's movement stopped, the house was filled with praises one after another. Even Long Zhengyu and Long Zhengyu brothers were not stingy with their praises. At this moment, it seemed that winning or losing was no longer important. Everyone had been completely convinced by Jia Ruidao's gambling skills. Amidst everyone's praises, Jia Ruidao slowly opened the dice cup and revealed the points of the dice inside the dice cup. Full point, it's actually a full point. We will win. Worthy to be called Grandmaster Jia. His movements are so handsome, and his control of the points is also so good. I am completely convinced. It's a pity that Grandmaster Jia is no longer willing to accept apprentices. Otherwise, I will definitely worship Grandmaster Jia as my master. When the dice's points were revealed, Zhang Yongjin, Shui Renfei, and Hu Wanjun couldn't help but exclaim out loud again. Their faces turned red because of excitement as they danced like children. Zhang Deqin's face also revealed a charming smile. She looked at Long Zhengyu and Long Zhengyu brothers, and her eyes couldn't help but flash with pity and sympathy. Although Long Zhengyu and Long Zhenglin brothers appreciated Jia Ruidao's gambling skills, when the dice's points were revealed, they still couldn't help but feel a sense of loss and discomfort in their hearts. Especially Long Zhengyu. The moment the result came out, his body swayed and he almost staggered and fell to the ground. Brother Tang, you have tried your best. It's okay, we can afford to lose. Seeing the nervous face of Tan Xiu, Long Zhengyu patted the other's shoulder and softly comforted him. What kind of expression is this? I haven't even started yet. Do you think that the result of the gambling game has already been decided? Feeling that the atmosphere in the room was a bit wrong, Tan Xiu loudly shouted. Under everyone's doubtful and contemptuous eyes, Tan Xiu picked up the dice cup, put 5 dice into the dice cup, and then shook it. When they heard Tan Xiu's words, Zhang Yongjin, Hu Wanjun, and Shui Renfei subconsciously wanted to ridicule him, but Tan Xiu's movements were too fast. They didn't even have the time to open their mouths when Tan Xiu had already started to shake the dice. Remembering the rules of the gambling game, they had to resist the urge to make a sound and just looked at Tan Xiu with disdain. Dong, dong dong, dong dong dong. If the sound of Jia Ruidao's dice shaking was like a cheerful symphony that was pleasing to the eye, then the sound of Tang Xiu's dice shaking was like a heavy war drum that nearly suffocated people. Hearing the sound of the dice cup in Tan Xiu's hand, Jia Ruidao's eyes couldn't help but lit up. Before, when Jia Ruidao stopped shaking the dice, a trace of regret appeared in his heart. He was too excited a moment ago, so much so that his skill in shaking the dice suddenly rose to another level, and his performance was far better than the usual level. He was afraid that his extraordinary performance would hit Tan Xiu, making Tan Xiu unable to recover. But when Tan Xiu didn't give up and even displayed a skill that was completely different from his skill in shaking the dice, Jia Ruidao's heart, in addition to being happy, was even more shocked. Other people were also completely dumbfounded. As if they were hypnotized, each and every one of them stared blankly at Tan Xiu. They didn't know what was going on. It seemed like a moment, but it also seemed like 10,000 years. When Tan Xiu's movement suddenly stopped, the people in the room almost unanimously shook their heads, sobering themselves up from the illusion. Under everyone's gaze, Tan Xiu slowly opened the dice cup. It's also a full point. How is this possible? No, I must have seen it wrong. He just casually shook it a few times. How could it be a 6? This luck, this luck. After clearly seeing the dice's points, the faces of the people in the room were filled with disbelief, especially Shui Renfei, Huan Jun, and Zhang Yongjin. The three of them were dumbfounded as they cried out in alarm. Grandmaster Jia, shall we continue? Tan Xiu glanced at Jia Ruidao, who was also in a sluggish state, and loudly invited him to continue. Okay, let's continue. Jia Ruidao stared at Tan Xiu for a long time, and then replied with overflowing fighting intent. When everyone hadn't completely recovered from the shock caused by Tan Xiu, Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu had already started the 4th round of gambling. This time, Jia Ruidao directly placed 6 dice in the dice cup. With our level of shaking the dice, it seems that comparing the number of dice seems to have lost its meaning. It is possible that we won't be able to determine the result even after dark. Why don't we increase the difficulty a bit? Before Jia Ruidao began to shake the dice, his eyes suddenly moved as he said with a smile on his face. Hearing Jia Ruidao's words, everyone in the room couldn't help but stare blankly. Jia Ruidao was actually able to say such words. Didn't this mean that he admitted that Tan Xiu's skill in shaking the dice was on par with him? Grandmaster Jia, how do you plan to gamble? Tan Xiu's interest also increased after hearing this. Both of us will shake the dice at the same time and simultaneously put it down. Then, we will guess the number of dice in the other's dice cup. Whoever guesses correctly will win. Jia Ruidao said with a playful smile. Everything is as Grandmaster says. Not waiting for the Long Zhengyu and Long Zhenglin brothers to refute, Tan Xiu smiled and agreed. You brat really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. You actually dare to play a game of guessing the number of dice with Grandmaster Jia. Comparing the number of dice can rely on luck, but guessing the number of dice cannot rely on luck. When Zhang Yongjin heard Jia Ruidao's words, it seemed that he approved of Tan Xiu's skill in shaking the dice. His heart felt very uncomfortable. But now, seeing that Tan Xiu actually dared to agree to Jia Ruidao's new gambling method, he suddenly couldn't help but speak up. One must know that Zhang Yongjin was extremely fond of gambling. He had once begged Jia Ruidao to accept him as an apprentice. However, ever since Jia Ruidao accepted him as an apprentice 3 years ago, he used his old age as an excuse and was no longer willing to accept any apprentices. Jia Ruidao was not short of money, so Zhang Yongjin's unique trick of throwing money didn't work. He could only lament his inadequacy. Zhang Yongjin never thought that Tan Xiu, who was always at odds with him, would unexpectedly be recognized by Jia Ruidao. This naturally made Zhang Yongjin very unhappy. It turns out that Grandmaster Jia's fierceness is not only reflected in the gambling skill itself. Grandmaster Jia's skills outside of gambling are also unique. This Long can be considered to have experienced it today. Just as Zhang Yongjin's voice faded, Long Zhenglin coldly snorted. Long Zhenglin was originally worried that Tan Xiu's gambling skill was not as good as Jia Ruidao's. But now, he finally saw that Tan Xiu had a hope of winning in shaking the dice. He never thought that Jia Ruidao would change his gambling method, and Tan Xiu even agreed to it. Long Zhenglin didn't see the subtle changes in the relationship between Tan Xiu and Jia Ruidao. In his view, Jia Ruidao was just using a provocation method a moment ago, and Tan Xiu was too young. Then he was defeated by Jia Ruidao's sugar-coated bullet, and under his impulse, he accepted Jia Ruidao's gambling invitation. Naturally, Long Zhenglin was very anxious. In fact, it wasn't only Long Zhenglin who was anxious, Long Zhengyu was even more anxious. However, Long Zhengyu's temperament was obviously calm, so he was able to control his emotions. On the other side, Zhang Deqin and several other people were beaming with joy. Although Tan Xiu's skill in shaking the dice a moment ago had startled them, but the gambling skill displayed by Jia Ruidao had swayed their minds and made them full of confidence. Especially after Jia Ruidao proposed to change the gambling method, Zhang Deqin and others became even more excited. Chapter 44. Are you afraid? If you are afraid, then just directly admit defeat. Long Jinglin's words suddenly attracted Zhang Yongjin's attention. He quickly pointed the spearhead at Long Jinglin and mocked him. It's simply a joke. Grandmaster Jia's words made him so complacent that he can't even find his position. Sure enough, the older the ginger, the spicier. Grandmaster Jia is simply too powerful. Shui Renfei and Hu Wanjun squinted at Tan Xiu. Their faces were full of ridicule. Tan Xiu turned a deaf ear to Zhang Yongjin and others' ridicule. He and Jia Ruidao looked at each other and then picked up the dice cup and shook it. Although Tan Xiu didn't speak, it was better than countless words. When Tan Xiu began to shake the dice cup, Zhang Yongjin, Hu Wanjun, and Shui Renfei felt as if their necks were being strangled. They were no longer able to say a word. The smile on their faces also froze at the same time. Their appearance was very awkward. With their identity, if they were to meet Tan Xiu on the street, they were simply too lazy to look at Tan Xiu. But now, they took the initiative to talk to Tan Xiu, but they were ignored by Tan Xiu. This was simply more uncomfortable than slapping them in the face. But because of the gambling rules, they couldn't do anything now. Therefore, their hearts were as sullen as they could be. Looking at Tan Xiu with an appreciative look, Jia Ruidao also picked up the dice cup and shook it. The room instantly turned silent. Only the sound of the two dice cups and the fierce collision of the dice could be heard. For a moment, it was sunny, and for a moment, it was stormy. For a moment, it was calm, and for a moment, it was stormy. Along with the shaking of Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu's wrists, the sound in the room was fast, slow, light, and heavy. Everyone's heart was up and down, and their faces were full of tension. Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu were tightly staring at each other's eyes. They didn't pay attention to the dice cups in their hands. When everyone in the room was almost suffocating, only a muffled bang sound was heard. Jia Ruidao and Tan Xiu simultaneously slammed the dice cups in their hands on the table. Do you want to go first, or should I? Jia Ruidao looked at Tan Xiu and asked with a smile. Grandmaster Jia should go first. Tan Xiu made a gesture of invitation and said respectfully. Although the two of them were fighting just now, they were communicating more. In the end, the two of them even entered a state of mutual accompaniment. After fighting for a while, not only did the two of them deepen their understanding and familiarity with each other, but they also forged a deep friendship. It could be said that they appreciated each other. Hearing Tan Xiu's words, a thoughtful look appeared on Jia Ruidao's face. 4 o'clock? No, 6 o'clock. After thinking for a long time, Jia Ruidao spoke out a number. However, after saying this number, he instantly changed his words, and his face revealed an awkward expression. Clearly seeing Jia Ruidao's reaction, Zhang Deqin and the others couldn't help but be stunned. Zhang Deqin and the others had a kind of fanatical worship and trust towards Jia Ruidao's gambling skills. They had also witnessed Jia Ruidao's casino legend one after another. They had never thought that Jia Ruidao would have a moment of uncertainty in the casino. But now, they saw Jia Ruidao hesitate. Moreover, Jia Ruidao actually hesitated in front of an outsider, a newcomer in the casino. This made their jaws drop to the ground. Grandmaster Jia, are you sure you won't change it? Tan Xiu didn't immediately open the dice cup, but asked with a pondering expression. Won't change it? Jia Ruidao was choked by Tan Xiu's words and almost lost his breath. However, thinking of his arrogance and rudeness when he saw Tan Xiu, he endured the anger in his heart. Grandmaster Jia, I'm sorry, but you guessed wrong. Tan Xiu wanted to give Jia Ruidao another chance, but he was afraid that doing so would hurt Jia Ruidao's self-esteem. Therefore, he very generously opened the dice cup. At the moment when Tan Xiu opened the dice cup, Jia Ruidao's complexion couldn't help but turn pale, and his body also started to sway. Because the 6 dices in Tan Xiu's dice cup were actually stacked into a pillar. Only the top dices revealed the points, while the rest of the dices were completely covered. According to the rules of the dice game, when the dices were stacked, the points of the topmost dices would be calculated. At this time, the topmost dices in Tan Xiu's dices were impressively 4. In other words, when Jia Ruidao guessed the points, he guessed correctly the first time, but he guessed wrong the second time. Moreover, he insisted on the wrong answer. This old man has been unhindered in the casino for many years. Except for those years when I just started to learn, I have never met any opponent in the Shuangqing province. Today, this old man finally understood the true meaning of the words the younger generation will surpass us in time. Jia Ruidao stared at Tan Xiu for a long time before he turned around and walked away. Only when Jia Ruidao walked to the door did Zhang Deqin and the others react to what had happened. Hey, Grandmaster Jia, don't go. The result of our bet still hasn't come out. Grandmaster Jia, please wait. It's not necessarily that you lost. Zhang Deqin and Zhang Yongjin immediately chased after Jia Ruidao and hurriedly urged him to stay. Hu Wanjun hesitated for a moment and also chased after them. Only Shui Renfei vigilantly stared at Jia Ruidao's dice cup, fearing that Tan Xiu and the others would peek. In the end, Zhang Deqin and the others were still unable to stop Jia Ruidao. In fact, the moment Jia Ruidao turned around and left, Zhang Deqin knew that it was impossible for her to stop Jia Ruidao. Jia Ruidao's character was extremely stubborn. Once he decided on something, it would be very difficult for others to change his mind. Returning back to the house in a gloomy mood, Zhang Deqin and the others were stunned for a moment when they saw the dice cup that had yet to be opened. Then their eyes lit up. The bet still hasn't ended? Doesn't this mean that I haven't lost yet? For a moment, the frustration and discouragement on the faces of Zhang Deqin and the others disappeared. They instantly became excited. Chief Long, I don't know if this gambling expert you invited can guess the number in the dice cup? Zhang Deqin's gaze stayed on Tan Xiu's face for a moment before she sneered and said. Although Zhang Deqin had now faintly recognized Tan Xiu's gambling skills, she still believed that it was impossible for Tan Xiu's gambling skills to be higher than Jia Ruidao's. Therefore, her words and actions didn't show due respect to Tan Xiu. 3 points. Almost as soon as Zhang Deqin's voice fell, Tan Xiu answered without hesitation. Hearing Tan Xiu's words, Zhang Deqin couldn't help but feel angry. Under Zhang Deqin's nod, Shui Renfei slowly opened the dice cup, revealing the dices. Unlike Tang Xiu's dices, which were all stacked into a column, Jia Ruidao's dices were divided into 3 groups. Each group had 2 dices, and each dices were overlapped. Only the topmost dices showed the number, and these numbers were all 1 without exception. When everyone in the house clearly saw the number of dices in Jia Ruidao's dice cup, they were suddenly stunned. We won. Brother, did you see it? We won. Long Zhenglin was the first one who couldn't help but excitedly cheer. I said that boss can do it. Now, you should believe me, right? Long Zhengyu's face was also full of happiness, but he didn't lose his self-control due to excitement. Instead, he calmly looked at Zhang Deqin and softly said, Chief Zhang, I don't know whether the bet between us is valid or not. Chief Long, you can rest assured. Since you have won the bet, the development rights of Walled Hill Village are naturally yours. In addition, we will offer you 10% of the Sky Street Commercial City's shares in 10 days. Zhang Deqin pursed her lips and pondered for a moment. Then, she immediately revealed a smile and generously admitted her defeat. Although the Zhang family had a strong power in the Shuangqing province, the Long family's power was also not bad. Moreover, the Long family was a rising star with a stronger potential. If the Zhang family wanted to deal with the Long family, then they would definitely suffer a great loss. In fact, when the family's business had developed to a certain stage, they would have formed a mutually intertwined chain of interests. It was simply impossible to have a bloody fight, and they could only choose to fight within the rules. This was also the reason why Zhang Deqin didn't use any underhanded means when she wanted to obtain the development rights of Walled Hill Village. Instead, she chose to fight with Long Zhengyu in an extremely above-board way. Since it was a fight, naturally, there must be a bet. The Long family's bet was to withdraw from the competition for the development rights of Walled Hill Village, while the Zhang family's bet was to give up 10% of the Sky Street Commercial City shares. This Long first thanks Chief Zhang on behalf of my father. Hearing Zhang Deqin's words, Long Zhengyu subconsciously felt relieved. Although the Zhang family was the Sky Street Commercial City's major shareholder, but the Zhang family only held 35% of the Sky Street Commercial City shares. The rest of the shares were in the hands of several other shareholders. The Long family built the Sky Street Commercial City in order to plan it as a food and beverage city. However, they didn't have enough funds at that time, so they brought in too many shareholders. As a result, the Long family's handling of matters was restricted everywhere, and the overall layout of the Sky Street Commercial City was still not completed. Now, with the transfer of 10% of the Zhang family's shares, although the Long family still couldn't complete the control of the Sky Street Commercial City, but the Long family's speaking power in the Sky Street Commercial City had undoubtedly increased a lot. As long as the Long family released this news, they could easily buy the shares of the other small shareholders. You're welcome. Chief Long should thank himself for inviting such a good master, Zhang Deqin said perfunctorily. Then, her eyes immediately fell on Tan Xiu with a complex expression. As for Zhang Yongjin, Huan Jun, and Xuerenfei, the moment the dice cup was opened, they were dumbfounded. In the eyes of these three people, Tan Xiu was just a vulgar and barbaric country bumpkin. Apart from having brute force, he didn't have anything else. But after falling in the hands of Tan Xiu again and again, they found that it wasn't the case at all. Especially after Tan Xiu showed his powerful gambling skills, their minds swayed, and they couldn't recover for a long time. The three people originally planned to find someone to investigate Tan Xiu's identity after today, and then slowly deal with Tan Xiu. But when Tan Xiu successfully helped the Long family win the gambling game, they knew that they couldn't easily retaliate against Tan Xiu. Although Long Zhenyu looked kind on the surface and didn't seem to have any temper, Zhang Yongjin, Huan Jun, and Xuerenfei were very clear that in front of Long Zhenyu, who was once the #1 playboy in Shuangqing province, they were nothing. However, Long Zhenyu was the kind of person who valued friendship and righteousness. Since Tan Xiu helped Long Zhenyu so much, it was impossible for Long Zhenyu to watch Tan Xiu being bullied and be indifferent. Chapter 45. It could be said that Zhang Deqin's group came in high spirits, but returned in disappointment. Originally, they were determined to win Walled Hill Village. In fact, after Jia Ruidao came out of the mountain, no one thought that Zhang Deqin would lose. Others didn't think so, and Zhang Deqin herself was 100 times more confident. In the previous public opinion campaign, the alliance led by the Zhang family had an absolute advantage, whereas the Long family was gloomy as they wailed in grief. But Zhang Deqin had never dreamed that she would lose this bet, and lose in such an inexplicable way. Brother Tang, thank you very much. If not for you, our Long family would have suffered a setback. Moreover, it would have been a big setback. After Zhang Deqin's group left, the calm and tranquil expression on Long Zhenyu's face instantly disappeared and was replaced by excitement. He grabbed Tan Xiu's hand and shook it vigorously. Seeing Long Zhenyu suddenly changing his face in front of him, his facial muscles couldn't help but twitch fiercely. He was a bit uncomfortable for a while. Brother Long is too polite. To tell you the truth, the reason why I agreed to help is that I have a request. After pondering for a moment, Tan Xiu spoke in a soft voice. Hey, that's nothing. Do you know how much Walled Hill Village's development value is? Do you know how much 10% of the Sky Street Commercial City's shares are worth? Both of them are worth countless millions. Moreover, some things can't be bought with money. Just as Tan Xiu's voice faded, Long Zhenyu shook his head and refuted. Upon hearing Long Zhenyu's words, Tan Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If it wasn't for Long Zhenyu's skillful performance in the fight with Zhang Deqin, Tan Xiu would have suspected that the person standing in front of him was a fool. He hadn't even opened his mouth to speak his conditions, yet Long Zhenyu had already told him the value of Walled Hill Village and the Sky Street Commercial City. Wasn't this forcing him to ask for a sky-high price? Fortunately, Tan Xiu had been living in the immortal world for more than 10,000 years, and his temperament had long been cultivated to be very calm and steady. Therefore, even if Long Zhenyu exaggerated the value of Walled Hill Village and Sky Street Merchant City, he was still indifferent and didn't have any greedy thoughts in his heart. Brother Tang, the reason why I offered 1 million yuan before was to recruit a gambling expert was because I knew that after Jia Ruidao promised to help Zhang Deqin, no matter how high my offer was, no one would dare to help me. In fact, 1 million yuan is far from enough for a gambling expert. Tang Xiu said with a smile. Do you know the price that Zhang Deqin gave to Jia Ruidao? 5 million. Regardless of winning or losing, it's still 5 million. There's no room for bargaining. This time, Zhang Deqin and the others have suffered a double loss. It's a terrible loss. Brother Tang, since you can win against Jia Ruidao, then your price certainly can't be lower than his. Therefore, I will also give you a 5 million yuan check. As for the other condition, as long as my Long family can do it, I won't be stingy. Not waiting for Tan Xiu to speak, Long Zhengyu had already raised the reward. Moreover, he had an expression that said, if you dare to refuse, then I will fight with you. Seeing Long Zhengyu's heroic and lofty appearance, Tan Xiu's mind was in a trance as if he was looking at himself in the immortal world. Brother Long doesn't need to be so polite. I still insist on the 1 million yuan reward. Even if I don't want the 1 million yuan reward, because I want a piece of land on the hilltop of Walled Hill Village. Tan Xiu stared at Long Zhengyu for a moment and spoke in a deep voice. The piece of land doesn't need to be too big, about 1,000 square meters will do. Brother Tang wants a piece of land on Walled Hill Village? Long Zhengyu obviously didn't expect that Tan Xiu would put forward such a request. He couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment, because he couldn't figure out why Tan Xiu wanted a piece of land on Walled Hill Village. Brother Tang, is it convenient for you to tell me why you want a piece of land on Walled Hill Village? On the other side of Walled Hill Village is Yuzhou Ridge. Yuzhou Ridge is my hometown. Standing on the hilltop of Walled Hill Village, you can have a panoramic view of Yuzhou Ridge. If I build a courtyard there and plant 2 pieces of land, my mom will definitely be very happy. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment. He didn't speak about the matter of the spiritual vein, but casually made up a reason. However, Tan Xiu's words weren't without a target. He knew that although his mother accompanied him to Star City to study, but in fact, she was very homesick. Although Walled Hill Village was a distance away from Yuzhou Ridge, but because of the high altitude of Walled Hill Village, standing on the hilltop of Walled Hill Village, one could see the whole picture of Yuzhou Ridge from afar. If one were to use a telescope, they would be able to see it even more clearly. So Brother Tang wants to build a manor. Just leave this matter to our Long's dining hall. We will definitely help you build a beautiful manor. I guarantee that you and Auntie will be satisfied. After listening to Tan Xiu's words, Long Zhengyu subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. Because Long Zhengyu regarded Walled Hill Village as an extremely important piece of land, he had learned a profound lesson from the Tianjia commercial city. Therefore, regarding the development of Walled Hill Village, he already had an overall plan. With the current strength of the Long family, they were fully capable of independently completing the overall plan of Walled Hill Village. If Tan Xiu wanted to do another project in Walled Hill Village, and that project would conflict with the overall plan of the Long's dining hall, Long Zhengyu would certainly feel very embarrassed. However, he would still try his best to satisfy Tan Xiu's request. After all, the development rights of Walled Hill Village was won by Tan Xiu, which Long Zhengyu also agreed to. Since Tan Xiu's request and the overall plan of the Long's dining hall didn't have any conflict, the stone in Long Zhengyu's heart naturally fell to the ground. Hearing that Long Zhengyu had agreed to his request, Tan Xiu was also happy. Under the hospitality of the 2 brothers, Long Zhengyu and Long Zhenglin, Tan Xiu visited the Long's dining hall and had a hearty meal before they went to Walled Hill Village together. When the 2 brothers, Long Zhengyu and Long Zhenglin, took Tan Xiu to Walled Hill Village, they also directly brought the designer along. After arriving at the hilltop, Tan Xiu directly found the location of the spiritual vein and told them about the area he wanted. The 2 brothers, Long Zhengyu and Long Zhenglin, stood on the hilltop and looked in the direction of Yuzhou Ridge. They found that they could really see the scenery of Yuzhou Ridge at a glance. Therefore, they thoroughly believed Tan Xiu's words. Although the flowers and trees on the wasteland with the spiritual vein as the center were particularly lush, the 2 brothers didn't find any abnormalities. Since Walled Hill Village was originally a virgin forest with overgrown weeds, even if the flowers and trees around the location of the spiritual vein were slightly lush, they still wouldn't be able to sense it. Brother Tang, I've inspected Walled Hill Village more than 10 times and almost turned it over. I've also passed by this place several times, but I've never found this place to be good. Now that you've chosen it, why do I feel that this place is the most beautiful place on the mountain? Long Zhengyu retracted his gaze and said half jokingly and half seriously. Upon hearing it, Tan Xiu's pupils shrunk as he immediately said with a smile, "Didn't the ancients say that the unobtainable is always the best?" What Brother Tang said is extremely true. I'm being petty. Hearing Tan Xiu's explanation, Long Zhengyu couldn't help but burst into laughter. He no longer entangled himself with it and let the designer start measuring the land and drawing the design. When Long Zhengyu asked Tan Xiu what he wanted the courtyard to look like, a heavenly paradise in the immortal world suddenly appeared in Tan Xiu's mind. Almost unconsciously, Tan Xiu picked up the designer's pen and started to draw on the A4 paper. In the beginning, the designer didn't think much of it. He thought that a high school student couldn't possibly understand design, nor could he draw anything good. But when the outline of the building slowly emerged on the paper, the designer's eyes instantly widened. Because the drawing skill displayed by Tan Xiu was unexpectedly many times better than his. The soft and graceful lines didn't look like they were drawn by a pencil, but rather by a computer drawing tool. More importantly, Tan Xiu's design actually gave the designer an indescribable feeling. It was simple yet full of grandeur, luxurious yet full of elegance, heavy yet full of ethereality, and rough yet full of elegance. It was as if the design had come to life. At first, Long Zhengyu and Long Jinglin thought that Tan Xiu was very concerned about the planning of his manner, so he couldn't help but grab the designer's pen and paper. They didn't think that Tan Xiu could draw anything decent. When the two brothers found that the designers seemed to be shocked by Tan Xiu's design, they couldn't help but move their heads closer. The reaction of the two brothers was even more unbearable than the designers. They were so surprised that their eyeballs almost protruded out. "Eldest brother, you really are my eldest brother. Your gambling skills are amazing, but your drawing skills are also amazing. How can other people live with you?" Long Zhenglin let out a miserable howl as he didn't hesitate to express his admiration for Tan Xiu. "Is this really a place where people can live? Why do I feel like it's like a heavenly palace? Grand, elegant, ethereal, and elegant. If it was matched with the clouds and mist of Walled Hill Village, it would simply be the best in the mountains." Long Zhengyu couldn't help but exclaim after observing for a long time. "Brother Tang, I have a presumptuous request, but I don't know if you can agree to it." After pondering for a moment, Long Zhengyu looked at Tan Xiu with a face full of expectation as he nervously asked, "Brother Long, it's a critical moment for my college entrance test. I don't have extra time to do other things." Although Long Zhengyu hadn't said his heart's request, Tan Xiu had already guessed it, so he smiled and shook his head. I knew that Brother Tang would refuse me." Long Zhengyu couldn't help but sigh when he heard it. Then he immediately said in a relieved tone, "But then again, the overall development of Walled Hill Village would require at least 10 years of effort. Even the drawing of the design would take almost a year of effort. With Brother Tang's ability, wasting time on this is indeed not worth it." Long Zhengyu didn't get angry because of Tan Xiu's refusal. Rather, he understood Tan Xiu's choice very well. Originally, Tan Xiu only wanted the location of the spiritual vein and some of the land around it. But because the heavenly abode and blessed lands design he drew was too beautiful, Long Zhengyu became excited and wanted the design to be completely displayed on the hilltop of Walled Hill Village. Therefore, the 1,000 square meters of land that Tan Xiu wanted became 5,000 square meters of land. Chapter 46. Long Zhengyu finally gave Tan Xiu a bank card with 1 million yuan in cash. He originally wanted to give Tan Xiu 5 million yuan as a reward, but after Tan Xiu asked for the spiritual vein in Walled Hill Village, he didn't want more money from Long Zhengyu. However, Long Zhengyu repeatedly promised that he would seriously build Tan Xiu's heavenly palace and make it the most beautiful scenery in Walled Hill Village, as well as the landmark of Walled Hill Village. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before he finally agreed to Long Zhengyu's request. On one hand, Tan Xiu missed the heavenly paradise in the immortal world, and he wanted to restore it. On the other hand, Long Zhengyu was completely attracted by Tan Xiu's heavenly palace. He had the idea of turning the entire Walled Hill Village into a heavenly court, and wanted to make Tan Xiu's heavenly palace the core of Walled Hill Village. This was a matter that benefited both himself and others, so Tan Xiu naturally wouldn't refuse. After going down the mountain, Tan Xiu went to the real estate agent. Tan Xiu wanted to temper his body, but naturally he couldn't do it in his own home, nor in the wilderness. Although Walled Hill Village was a good choice, but there were likely to be other demonic beasts there, and Tan Xiu didn't want to be attacked by demonic beasts while he was in seclusion cultivation. Therefore, Tan Xiu wanted to find a quiet and remote place with a perfect security system to temper his body and cultivate. When Tan Xiu stated his requirements for the house, the real estate agent looked at Tan Xiu with a strange expression. "Mr. Tang, it's easy to find a quiet and remote community. But you have such high requirements for the community's security, which is a bit difficult to find. Only those luxurious upscale communities or luxurious villas would have security to the extreme. It's impossible for ordinary communities to have such a good security system. It seems that there's only one community in the entire Star City that has all the three conditions you mentioned. But that community's rental fee is particularly high, and the identity control is also very strict." The agent glanced at Tan Xiu's clothes and spoke hesitantly. "What do you mean by strict identity control?" Seeing his agent's troubled look, Tan Xiu was stunned. Because the people living in this district are either rich or respectable, the residents of this district seem to have formed an unspoken rule. That is, ordinary people are not allowed to move in unless the residents of this district vouch for them. Only outsiders can move in. The agent hesitated for a moment before softly explaining. Tan Xiu was speechless after hearing his agent's explanation. Tan Xiu did not continue to talk to his agent. Instead, he took out his mobile phone and directly dialed Long Jinglin's number. "Boss, we've only left for a short while and you're already missing me. I know you love me." On the other end of the phone, Long Jinglin was still immersed in the joy of obtaining Walled Hill Village as he laughed and joked. Upon hearing this, Tan Xiu felt a chill in his heart as he snappily cursed. Then, he asked if the other party knew the residents of Southgate Town. "You want to rent a house in Southgate Town? Hey, why didn't you say so earlier? Don't you know that Southgate Town was developed by my family?" After listening to Tan Xiu's words, Long Jinglin exclaimed from the other end of the phone. In the next moment, another person spoke on the other end. "Brother Tang, the houses in Southgate Town have long been sold out. It's basically not rented out. But my friend bought a house in Southgate Town in the early years. After he finished the renovation, he found that the house was near the mountain and the lighting was very poor, so he never moved in. If you want it, I'll give it to you directly. Either you sell it to me according to the market price, or I'll find another place. Choose one of the two." Seeing that Long Zhengyu wanted to stuff things into his hands, Tan Xiu felt a headache as he refused without hesitation. "Hey, Brother Tang, it's not that I want to criticize you, but you're too serious. You won't have any friends in the future. Although the house is big but the lighting is too poor. It simply can't be sold at a high price. Otherwise, my friend would have sold it long ago and wouldn't have been vacant for so many years. Well, if you really want to buy it, 1 million yuan will do. I'll immediately send the key to you." On the other end of the phone, Long Zhengyu simply didn't give Tan Xiu the opportunity to speak and directly finalized the matter. When Tan Xiu hung up the phone with a forced smile, he found that the agent was looking at him with a sluggish expression. He froze for a moment before he understood what was going on. The other party had most likely heard the content of his conversation with Long Zhengyu. "Mr. Tang, I'm sorry. I didn't know that you're Chief Long's friend. I offended you a moment ago." The agent awkwardly smiled at Tan Xiu as he hurriedly apologized. "Is Chief Long very famous in Star City?" Tan Xiu asked with a puzzled expression. "Mr. Tang, it's estimated that 9 out of 10 girls in Star City know Chief Long. Don't you think he's famous?" Tang Rong said with a flushed face. Tan Xiu couldn't help but be stunned when he heard this. Although Long Zhengyu was a bit handsome, but he wasn't handsome to the point where he could shock the world and make the gods cry. Moreover, Long Zhengyu was a businessman, not a star. How could he be so famous in Star City? However, Tan Xiu didn't ask any more questions. He turned around and left the real estate agent, heading towards the appointed place with Long Zhengyu. A few minutes later, Long Zhenglin personally delivered the key and took away his ID card. When Tang Xiu handed over his bank card to Long Zhenglin refused to accept it. Eldest brother, you can't enter Southgate Town just because you have a house key. I suggest you use this 1 million to dress yourself up from top to bottom. If you go to Southgate Town dressed like this, I'm 100% sure that you will be stopped outside by the security guards. Before leaving, Long Zhenglin said with a ruminating smile. Tan Xiu smiled and didn't put Long Zhenglin's words in his heart. Almost at the same moment when Long Zhenglin turned around, Tan Xiu stuffed the bank card with 1 million in cash into Long Zhenglin's pocket. Half an hour later, Tan Xiu arrived at the entrance of Southgate Town. Almost as Tan Xiu arrived at the entrance of the community, more than a dozen security guards excitedly swarmed him. Seeing a group of security guards aggressively rushing towards him, Tan Xiu was so scared that he almost ran away. His face revealed an extremely embarrassed expression. Tan Xiu was a bit regretful that he didn't listen to Long Zhenglin's words and dress himself up. Good afternoon, Mr. Tang. I'm Long Shuiyao, the property manager of Southgate Town. I'm very happy to serve you. Mr. Long asked me to take you to the Yaning courtyard. Please come with me. The tall girl, who was the leader, deeply bowed to Tan Xiu with a sweet smile hanging on her face as she greeted him in a crisp voice. Upon hearing Long Shuiyao's words, Tan Xiu, who was about to explain, couldn't help but be stunned. He immediately understood that he had been played by Long Zhengyu and Long Zhenglin brothers. Long Zhengyu and Long Zhenglin brothers had obviously figured out his character. They knew that it was impossible for him to spend so much time and money to dress himself up. Therefore, they deliberately put on such a play in order to scare him. Although he was cursing a few times in his heart, a charming smile appeared on Tan Xiu's face. He politely said thank you and then followed behind Long Shuiyao and the group of security guards. After entering the Southgate Town community, Tan Xiu found himself as if he had entered another world. Inside the residential area, the water was still and deep, and the flowers were blooming. It was completely different from the hustle and bustle outside the residential area. Moreover, there was a pavilion every 3 steps and a sentry post every 5 steps. Almost every sentry post had a security guard standing in a military posture. Seeing the passers-by, they would give a standard military salute. If he hadn't confirmed that he had entered a luxurious villa area, Tan Xiu would have suspected that he had entered a military compound. After passing through a patch of flowers and grass, Tan Xiu was led by Long Shuiyao to the deepest part of the community. There, he saw a single villa stuck on the cliff. The moment Tan Xiu saw the villa, he knew that he had been deceived. Although the villa was backed by a mountain, it was located on the sunny side. The lighting was obviously very good. Moreover, the top of the villa was surrounded by trees, giving it a different kind of charm. The other villas in the community simply couldn't be compared to it. Mr. Tang, this is my business card. If you need anything, feel free to call me at any time. I hope you can live comfortably in the community. Providing you with logistical support is our biggest responsibility. Clearly seeing Tan Xiu's reaction after seeing the villa, Long Shuiyao promptly handed over a business card and then quietly left with a group of security guards. At this time, Tan Xiu's mind was completely focused on the villa. After hurriedly saying goodbye to Long Shuiyao, he couldn't wait to get into the villa. After entering the villa, Tan Xiu knew that he had been deceived again. The villa had a total of 3 floors. Because it was built on the mountain, each floor had its own scenery. After entering the gate, there was a cobblestone path. On both sides of the path was a row of stone benches. The stone benches were arranged with different shapes of flowers and trees, which were very pleasing to the eye. The high entrance hall and the imposing door, the round arched windows and the cornerstone masonry were full of grace and luxury. The continuous arches and corridors were elegant and exquisite, and there was no lack of comfort. The decoration of the villa inherited the essence of traditional Chinese architecture, maintaining the traditional architecture's unique artistic style of ancient elegance, simplicity, and magnificence. It also took nature as a refuge and advocated Confucianism. It contained both Taoism and Buddhism. It contained both hidden and elegant, abstruse and elegant. Both classical and cheerful, The natural building materials and the climbing vines set off each other. It was classic but not fashionable. Almost at first glance, Tan Xiu deeply fell in love with this villa. Not counting the value of the villa itself, it is estimated that the villa's decoration alone would cost more than 1,000,000 yuan. I owe a big favor. When Tan Xiu was ready to take out his mobile phone and ask Long Zhengyu the real price of the villa, he found that Long Zhengyu had actually turned off his phone. Tan Xiu knew that Long Zhengyu was hiding from him. It was impossible for him to return this villa. It seems that I can only slowly repay this favor. Tan Xiu was originally reluctant to return the villa. Seeing that Long Zhengyu had turned off his phone, his heart was no longer entangled. If it were another person who suddenly received such a huge amount of wealth, they would certainly be at a loss. However, Tan Xiu was almost the richest man in the immortal world in his previous life, and he had the confidence to repay the Long family's favor. Therefore, Tan Xiu quickly and indifferently accepted the fact that Long Zhengyu had gifted him a villa. Chapter 47. Brother, here's your bank card. Dragon Bay Resort. When Long Zhenglin inadvertently pulled out a bank card from his pocket, he was stunned for a moment. Then, with a bitter face, he threw the bank card to Long Zhengyu. It's all right. Since Brother Tang doesn't want to take advantage of us, we'll accept it. Long Zhengyu looked at the bank card he gave away as his face exposed a pondering smile. Because the villa that Long Zhengyu gave to Tan Xiu was not bought by a friend. Rather, it was reserved for his own use. The villa was not a disposal house that couldn't be sold, but the king of the Southgate town's unique landscape building. Even if one had the money, they still couldn't buy it. The reason why Long Zhengyu deliberately said that the Yanning villa was unbearable was because he was afraid that Tan Xiu would be unwilling to accept his gift after knowing the true value of the villa. Zhengyu, Zhenglin, is that Tan Xiu really that outstanding? On the sofa, a middle-aged man put down the newspaper in his hand and asked with a face full of doubt. Long Hanwen always felt that his two sons were geniuses. He was extremely fond of his two sons. He simply didn't believe that there was a youngster in this world who could be more outstanding than his own children. However, after Long Hanwen returned home today, he was unexpectedly bombarded by his two sons for a long time. Moreover, the topic of their conversation revolved around an unfamiliar youngster, which made Long Hanwen extremely puzzled. Even if Long Hanwen came to know that Tan Xiu had won against Jia Ruidao at the gambling table, he only thought that his two sons had used some shameful means to make Jia Ruidao deliberately lose to Tan Xiu. He didn't think that Tan Xiu really had the gambling skills to win against Jia Ruidao. In fact, without personally witnessing the gambling scene between Tan Xiu and Jia Ruidao, no one dared to believe that there was someone in the Shuangqing province who could overpower Jia Ruidao at the gambling table. Brother, in Dad's eyes, except for us, everyone else is an idiot and a retard. We shouldn't do useless things. Hearing his father's words and looking at his father's expression, Long Zhenglin couldn't help but wail and directly went upstairs. Dad, I admit that your two sons are excellent, but you have to know that there is always someone better out there. If it wasn't for Tan Xiu's help this time, your sons would have fallen into the hands of Zhang Deqin and the others. Long Zhengyu dropped a sentence and walked into his bedroom. Long Hanwen looked at the backs of his two sons as they left, and his face couldn't help but reveal a thoughtful expression. Southgate Town. Tan Xiu spent half an hour to look at his villa from top to bottom. After that, he took a stroll around the villa's vicinity. He found that his villa was far away from the other villas, almost in an isolated state. This made him even more satisfied with the villa that Long Zhengyu had gifted him. After familiarizing himself with the villa and its surrounding environment, Tan Xiu went to the freezer and took out the python's blood essence, viscera, and a part of the python's meat. In addition, he also took out the medicinal herbs and minerals that he had gathered in Walled Hill Village. The heavenly art of cosmic genesis consisted of 3 stages, the first of which was the star's tyrannical body. The star's tyrannical body was divided into chi training, skin strengthening, flesh strengthening, bone transformation, meridian transformation, marrow transformation, viscera transformation, chi and blood circulation, and 9 controlled Dan steps. At present, Tan Xiu was undergoing the chi training stage to temper his body. This was also the first time he had tempered his body since he started cultivating the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. The body-tempering potion included a first-rank demonic beast's blood essence, internal organs, flesh, stargrass, poisonous demon rattan, jade essence stone, and other materials. The fresher the demonic beast's blood essence, viscera, and flesh, the better the potion's efficacy. This was also the reason why Tan Xiu couldn't wait to find a place to cultivate in seclusion after killing the python, instead of waiting for the college entrance test to slowly temper his body after 2 months. He methodically cleaned the star grass and poisonous demon rattan, and then ground the jade essence stone into powder. Immediately after, Tang Xiu also cleaned the python's internal organs and flesh several times. Only then did he carefully categorize these things according to a certain proportion. On the other side, Tan Xiu had long ago set up a large pot and boiled the originally frozen python's blood essence. Tan Xiu closely stared at the boiling python's blood essence as he threw the star grass and jade essence stone powder into it a little at a time. With the addition of the star grass and jade essence stone powder, the originally dark red blood quickly changed. The stench in the air gradually faded, and the color of the blood became dark blue. Faintly, white spots could be seen flashing in it, as if the blue sky was dotted with countless stars. When the stench in the air completely disappeared, Tang Xiu also threw the python's internal organs and python meat into it, and then took the poisonous demon rattan that he had prepared earlier and stirred it. Although the poisonous demon rattan had a vine in its name, it was in fact extremely hard, like an iron rod. The moment he picked up the poisonous demon rattan, Tan Xiu's expression became incomparably solemn, because he knew that the speed of stirring would directly affect the success or failure of the body-tempering liquid. Moreover, the body-tempering liquid also had extremely high requirements for the control of the fire. A little carelessness would cause an explosion. Although Tan Xiu had prepared several materials for refining the body-tempering liquid, and the location of the villa was very remote, he did not have to worry about attracting onlookers because of the explosion, but Tan Xiu still did not want to experience the feeling of failure. Under Tan Xiu's stirring, the originally hard internal organs and lumps of meat became soft little by little, and then turned into juice and blended into the medicinal liquid. What was even more strange was that the poisonous demon rattan in Tan Xiu's hand seemed to be bitten by something, and it was getting thinner little by little. It would be good if there was a medicine boy. I don't have to do such trivial and boring things. Tan Xiu stirred the poisonous demon rattan while thinking beautifully. Since it was the first time refining the body-tempering liquid, Tan Xiu was very nervous at the beginning. Slowly, when Tan Xiu got used to it, his spirit began to relax, and he became absent-minded. Almost unconsciously, Tan Xiu's mind appeared all kinds of scenes in the immortal world. For a time, he could not tell whether the 10,000 years in the immortal world was a dream, or he was now in a dream. Just as Tan Xiu was thinking about it, a yellow bubble suddenly gushed out of the huge boiler, and the smell in the house became unbearably stinky. Damn, it's going to explode. When Tan Xiu saw the bubble in the boiler instantly become bigger, he screamed, and then rushed out of the villa without hesitation. Almost Tan Xiu just ran to the door of the courtyard. There was a loud bang in the courtyard, and then all of Tan Xiu's previous efforts were ruined. It took Tan Xiu half an hour to clean up the debris on the ground, and then began the second refining journey. This time, Tan Xiu learned the first lesson, and did not dare to have any carelessness. He meticulously completed every step. Just when the poisonous demon vine in Tan Xiu's hand became thin, Tan Xiu once again became absent-minded, and then the boiler exploded again without exception. No, it's not my problem, it should be this poisonous demon vine's problem. When he was hit the first time, Tan Xiu felt that he was not paying attention, but when he was hit the second time, Tan Xiu only thought for a moment before he understood the problem. Tan Xiu took out a knife, scraped a layer of powder from the poisonous demon vine, and put it under his nose. The next moment, Tan Xiu's mind was full of mixed feelings, and he uncontrollably recalled all kinds of scenes in the immortal world. No wonder the heavenly art of cosmic genesis mentioned that refining the body refining liquid is very difficult, and the success rate is also very low. It's not that refining the body refining liquid is difficult, but the hallucinogenic effect of the poisonous demon vine is impossible to guard against. Tan Xiu was about to start the third refining, but when he saw the remaining materials on the ground, he began to become cautious. After simulating the refining process in his mind, Tan Xiu considered the possibility of the boiler exploding at each stage. The next moment, Tan Xiu once again scraped a layer of powder from the poisonous demon vine and directly smeared it on his temple. Then, unsurprisingly, Tan Xiu once again became absent-minded. Fortunately, I thought of this in time, otherwise I would have wasted another set of materials. This poisonous demon vine is too powerful. It can even affect a person's thoughts through the pores of the skin. Looking at the iron rod in his hand, Tan Xiu's heart gave birth to a trace of fear. Although it could be said that Tan Xiu's attainments in the field of medicinal pills had reached the pinnacle in his past life, but he didn't dare to pat his chest and say that he knew all the medicinal herbs. And this poisonous demon rattan was one of the medicinal herbs that he didn't know. He was completely following the diagram recorded in the Heavenly Art of Cosmic Genesis to find it. The Heavenly Art of Cosmic Genesis only recorded the materials needed to refine the body refining liquid and their respective amounts for the Qi training stage, but there was no mention of the medicinal properties of the various materials. Fortunately, most of the materials were extremely familiar to Tan Xiu. The only thing he was not familiar with was the poisonous demon vine. Had it been anyone else other than Tan Xiu who was refining the body refining liquid, it was estimated that they would be at a loss, and might even fail hundreds of times. Because any mistake in the details might lead to the failure of refining the body refining liquid. Even if it was Tan Xiu, he did not have the confidence to say that refining the body refining liquid would be 100% successful. He only had a little bit of familiarity with the medicinal properties of the poisonous demon vine, and only after completely understanding the medicinal properties of the poisonous demon vine could he guarantee the success rate of refining the body refining liquid. In the following time, Tan Xiu was not in a hurry to refine the body refining liquid, but repeatedly cut and studied one of the poisonous demon vines. It was not until an hour later that Tan Xiu confirmed that he had a complete understanding of the medicinal properties of the poisonous demon vine, that Tan Xiu once again opened the pot to refine medicine. Boil the blood essence. Put in the star spirit grass and green jade essence stone powder. Put in the internal organs and flesh. Stir. Hold one's breath. Seal the pores. Shield the facial features. Everything proceeded in an orderly manner. Time passed unknowingly. Tan Xiu's heart was completely suspended in midair, jumping up and down, thumping fiercely. Suddenly, the poisonous demon vine in Tan Xiu's hand made a ka-ch sound, causing Tan Xiu's heart to slow down by half a beat. Almost subconsciously, he opened his eyes. The potion in the cauldron had already turned into a dazzling golden color, and it was emitting a refreshing fragrance. Is this a success? Looking at the medicine in the pot for a moment, he found that the feared explosion did not come, and the color of the medicine was exactly the same as the color recorded. Tan Xiu's eyes could not help but bloom with a fiery light. What Tan Xiu did not notice was that at this moment his clothes were completely soaked in sweat, and his forehead was full of beads of sweat, as if he had just been fished out of the water. Chapter 48. Soon, Tan Xiu woke up from the successful refining of the body tempering potion. He took out the green jade stone essence plaster that he had prepared earlier and applied it evenly on his body. Tan Xiu was very careful when applying the plaster. He did not miss any part of his body, especially a certain key part of his lower body. He applied layer after layer. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiu transformed into a plaster armor warrior. His whole body was completely covered by the green jade stone essence plaster, from top to bottom. At the same time, a refreshing and cold feeling spread throughout his body, making Tan Xiu feel so comfortable that he almost moaned out loud. But looking at the boiling body tempering potion, Tan Xiu's eyes could not help but flash a hint of hesitation and fear. My body is too fragile. I don't know if it can withstand the violent baptism of the body tempering potion. Fortunately, after my soul returned to its complete state, I unintentionally cultivated the heavenly art of cosmic genesis and improved my body by quite a bit. Otherwise, I'm afraid that my little life would be over. Last night, I drank a bit too much python blood essence. The more the drug, the stronger the potion. The moment he stepped into the boiler, countless thoughts flashed through Tan Xiu's mind. But Tan Xiu knew that he could not escape this disaster, so he closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and resolutely stepped into the boiler. 1 foot. The other foot. Half of his body. His whole body. When Tang Xiu's whole body was immersed in the potion, he only heard a loud bang, as if the python blood essence in his body was suddenly ignited, and then a raging fire sprayed out from his mouth. The moment Tan Xiu opened his mouth, the golden body-tempering potion flowed into his stomach through his mouth. No, feeling the sharp pain in his mouth, Tan Xiu subconsciously wanted to jump out of the boiler. The next moment, Tan Xiu was dumbfounded because the green jade stone essence plaster had solidified. He wanted to move just now, but his body was imprisoned by the plaster. He could not make any movement, and naturally, he could not jump out of the boiler. After calming down, Tan Xiu could not help but secretly rejoice that he did not jump out of the boiler. If Tan Xiu had accidentally jumped out of the boiler just now, not only would he have suffered for nothing, but he would also have to refine the body-tempering liquid again. This was not an easy task. More importantly, the materials needed to refine the body-tempering potion had basically been used up. Tan Xiu had no way to find all the materials needed to refine the body-tempering potion in such a hurry. If he jumped out of the boiler, who knew how long it would take for him to refine his body in the qi cultivation stage? With the lesson of almost jumping into the wok, Tan Xiu began to raise his vigilance. He calmed himself down and did not dare to be careless again. However, Tan Xiu's expression only remained calm for a moment before his facial muscles began to contort and he let out a painful roar from his throat. It hurt a lot. It was very painful. Despite the green jade stone essence plaster protecting the surface of his body, Tan Xiu still felt as if countless knives were scraping on his bones, causing him to be in so much pain that he wanted to die. Moreover, this kind of pain did not only come from the surface of his body. Because of the existence of the python's blood essence, Tan Xiu felt as if there was a raging flame burning inside his body. His internal organs were all scorched, and even his blood seemed to be boiling. Tan Xiu wanted to divert his attention, but the continuous waves of pain coming from inside and outside his body made him unable to divert his attention, let alone cultivate the heavenly art of cosmic genesis in this state. Fortunately, Tan Xiu had obtained the heavenly art of cosmic genesis for a long time, and he had a kind of crazy obsession with the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. In the endless years in the immortal world, he had been reciting the heavenly art of cosmic genesis almost all the time, to the point that cultivating the heavenly art of cosmic genesis had become a kind of instinct of his body, and he did not need to deliberately control it. As the perfect divine art that could be cultivated by both the god race and the demon race at the same time, the heavenly art of cosmic genesis was not only a kind of divine sense cultivation method, but also an ancient and powerful body refining cultivation method. The heavenly art of cosmic genesis tempered and stimulated every part of the body through the body movements. These movements included kneading, pinching, bending, knocking, twisting, and other methods. It tempered and stimulated every part of the human body thousands of times, and finally created the body of the demon race. Of course, at the same time that the body was tempered through the body movements, it must also be matched with the corresponding level of medicine. Tan Xiu was now a little glad that he did not relax the tempering of his body before, so that he had already become accustomed to the pain of tempering his body in advance. Otherwise, if he was caught off guard and suffered this kind of pain, he would have directly fainted in the boiler. Time passed little by little. Tan Xiu's whole body was sweating like rain, and his spirit also became muddle-headed. The green jade stone essence plaster on Tan Xiu's body began to melt little by little, and his skin became red under the hot medicine, like a cooked shrimp. The violent and overbearing energy rampaged inside Tan Xiu's body, destroying Tan Xiu's tendons and internal organs. But at the same time, those damaged tendons and internal organs were wrapped by a strange energy, which quickly repaired, widened, and strengthened them. Under the wanton destruction and reconstruction, Tan Xiu's throat uncontrollably issued hoarse and meaningless howls and groans. Suddenly, without any mental preparation, Tan Xiu entered into the state of cultivation, and the unbearably distorted muscles on his face also slowly calmed down. What Tan Xiu did not notice was that when he entered into the state of cultivation, the moonlight was the brightest at night, and he was sitting in the courtyard under the illumination of the moonlight. The moonlight was bright and beautiful, and the sky was filled with stars, birdsong, fragrant flowers, and fluttering music. Suddenly, hundreds of millions of miles away, at the end of the blue dome of heaven, the stars turned into specks of starlight, as if fireworks were blooming, sprinkling over the sky of the South Gate town, completely enveloping the South Gate town. The South Gate town was located in a remote location, and coupled with the fact that it was late at night, the magnificent and bizarre scene that occurred over the South Gate town sky was not discovered by many people. Tan Xiu's body was like a huge magnet, continuously attracting the starlight that filled the sky to his side and into his body. Perhaps because of the body refining liquid, Tan Xiu's cultivation time today was especially long, and he was able to absorb more starlight than ever before. With the increase of the starlight absorption, the number of stars in Tan Xiu's body also slowly increased. 5 stars. 6 stars. 7 stars. When Tan Xiu suddenly opened his eyes, he found that the first ray of dawn from the horizon had already fallen on his courtyard. At the same time, an extremely comfortable feeling spread throughout his body, causing Tan Xiu to uncontrollably let out a moan. Tan Xiu looked down and found that the body refining liquid in the boiler had already turned transparent, as if it was a pot of boiling water, except that some black residue had settled at the bottom of the pot. Tan Xiu stretched his arms, and then heard a burst of crackling sounds, while his body felt incomparably comfortable. The next moment, Tan Xiu jumped out of the pot. Only a kachit sound was heard, as the big iron pot that Tan Xiu had specially bought from the food market last night was stepped on by Tan Xiu, leaving behind 2 big footprints. At the same time, Tan Xiu saw that the bluestone floor under his feet also had 2 more cracks. Did I seem to have grown taller? Tan Xiu felt that the angle of his vision was different from usual, so he deliberately went to the door and compared himself, and found that he had really grown taller. Tan Xiu was originally only 1.67 meters tall, but under the tempering of the body refining liquid, Tan Xiu's height had jumped by nearly 10 centimeters in just one night. In fact, the biggest change in Tan Xiu's body was not his height, but his strength. Tan Xiu was surprised to find that his strength had increased explosively, almost 10 times his original strength. Tan Xiu glanced around, and then saw a decorative boulder teapot in the courtyard. The boulder teapot was marked with the words, "A pot of 1,000 gold," carved on it. Tan Xiu smiled, stretched out his hands to hold the body of the teapot, and easily picked up the boulder teapot. The boulder teapot weighed exactly 1,000 caddies, and Tan Xiu estimated that he now had at least 3,000 caddies of strength, and that was just his arm strength. In addition to the increase in height and arm strength, Tan Xiu's divine sense had also skyrocketed. Before, Tan Xiu's divine sense could only cover a radius of a few meters, and he also had to concentrate to achieve this. At this time, Tan Xiu's divine sense covered a radius of nearly 100 meters, and Tan Xiu did not even need to take the initiative to investigate. 9 stars. There are actually 9 stars in my body. 9 is the limit in the heavenly art of cosmic genesis. Does this mean that I have reached the peak of the chi cultivating stage, and the next step is to go through the skin strengthening stage? When Tan Xiu used his divine sense to look inside, he found that the stars in his body had changed from 4 to 9, and he could not help but exclaim out loud. Although he had long known that the heavenly art of cosmic genesis was a godly cultivation technique that both the god race and demon race were crazy about, and that cultivating the heavenly art of cosmic genesis would increase one's strength very quickly, when Tan Xiu felt the true effect of the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, he was still scared. Right now I only have brute force, and my defensive power has not improved much. Only by completing the skin strengthening stage will I be invulnerable and barely have the power to protect myself. Soon, Tan Xiu woke up from the surprise of his cultivation advancement. His mood returned to normal, and when Tan Xiu was about to put on his clothes, he was dumbfounded. Because at this time, not only did Tan Xiu's height increase, but his physique had also become a lot stronger, and he could no longer wear his original clothes. This time, I have no choice but to spend money to dress myself up. Tan Xiu glanced at his old clothes, which were obviously missing a few sizes, and had no choice but to take out his mobile phone from the pocket of his old clothes to call for help. But when Tan Xiu saw the densely packed missed calls on his mobile phone, he could not help but feel puzzled. Chapter 49. Tan Xiu had only bought a mobile phone after winning money playing slot machines in the Health and Prosper Club. Therefore, there were very few people who knew Tan Xiu's mobile phone number. In addition to Yuan Chuling, Bans Ho, Ding Zi, and the others, Long Jinglin had also learned Tan Xiu's mobile phone number from Yuan Chuling. These people's names were also saved by Tan Xiu in his mobile phone. However, apart from Yuan Chuling, there were also two completely unfamiliar mobile phone numbers that called Tan Xiu. Moreover, these two mobile phone numbers actually called Tan Xiu's mobile phone number 17 times. Among them, the least number of calls to Tan Xiu's mobile phone number was 3 times, and the highest number of calls to Tan Xiu's mobile phone number was as many as 14 times. Tan Xiu naturally did not think that these two people had called the wrong number. In just one day, how could there be more than 60 phone calls to me? Did something happen? Tan Xiu's heart sank, and then he prepared to call Yuan Chuling's phone number. Because among the missed calls, Yuan Chuling had called Tan Xiu's number the most. He had actually called Tan Xiu's number 50 times. However, before Tan Xiu's number had finished dialing, his mobile phone rang. Seeing the caller ID Yuan Chuling, his face could not help but reveal a knowing smile, and he quickly pressed the answer button. "Boss, you are finally willing to answer the phone. During this time, I was almost driven crazy by Miss Han. After you left the school that day, Miss Han chased after you." After the phone was connected, without waiting for Tan Xiu to say anything, Yuan Chuling could not wait to narrate the matter. However, as Tan Xiu listened, he felt that something was wrong. He had clearly left the school for a day, so how could Yuan Chuling say that he had not been to school for a long time? Puzzled, Tan Xiu glanced at the time on the phone, and then his eyes instantly widened because the date shown on the phone was 10 days after he entered the villa. "I accidentally entered a state of epiphany. No wonder my strength increased so quickly." Thinking about how much his strength had increased this time, Tan Xiu finally understood what was going on. "Fatty, aside from Miss Han looking for me, there shouldn't be anything else, right?" Tan Xiu couldn't help but furrow his brows and interrupt Yuan Chuling's words. Seeing that Yuan Chuling was chattering for a long time without mentioning anything important, Tan Xiu couldn't help but frown and interrupt him. "Miss Han wanted to tell Auntie that you skipped school, but I stopped her. I told her that Auntie's health isn't good and that Auntie likes you very much. Once Auntie finds out that you skipped school and didn't come home, Auntie will definitely be worried sick and hospitalized. More importantly, I have repeatedly assured Miss Han that you are going out to study, and that there is no danger to your life, nor will it affect your grades." 10 days ago, although Tan Xiu handed Han Qingwu a leave of absence, saying that he wanted to take leave for about half a month, Han Qingwu was obviously unwilling to approve it. It was just that Han Qingwu didn't react for a moment, so Tan Xiu slipped away. Han Qingwu chased after Tan Xiu to the classroom but didn't see him. She couldn't help but chase after him to the school gate, but in the end she still couldn't see Tan Xiu. She could only helplessly return to the year group office, also weighing in her heart how to deal with this matter. Unexpectedly, when she was in class in the afternoon, Han Qingwu heard that there was a car accident on the pedestrian street not far from the school. It seemed that the person who was scratched was Tan Xiu. Although she didn't hear that anyone was killed, Han Qingwu's heart was still hanging in the air. She did not hesitate to find Yuan Chuling and asked Yuan Chuling to contact Tan Xiu. However, after Tan Xiu bought a mobile phone, in order to avoid being disturbed, he directly set the mobile phone to silent mode. Therefore, unless Tan Xiu was playing with the mobile phone and saw a call coming in, he basically couldn't answer the phone. As a result, Han Qingwu and Yuan Chuling called Tan Xiu more than a dozen times, but no one answered the phone. Although Tan Xiu's mobile phone was not answered, Tan Xiu's mobile phone was always turned on. This also made Han Qingwu and Yuan Chuling feel relieved. The mobile phone was not turned off, at least it could prove that he was safe. In the case that the phone could not be reached, Han Qingwu was still worried. Then, She followed the family contact address left by Tan Xiao to find Su Lingyun. Because Yuan Chuling had given her a warning in advance, Han Qingwu was particularly cautious when chatting with Su Lingyun. She did not reveal that Tan Xiao had skipped class, but more about Tan Xiao's family situation. At the same time, she reported the good news of Tan Xiao's improvement to Su Lingyun. "Fatty, thank you." After listening to Yuan Chuling's words, Tan Xiao finally knew how much trouble he had caused to Yuan Chuling and Han Qingwu by disappearing for 10 days. He was sincerely grateful. "Boss, we are brothers." Saying this is too polite. But then again, if you hadn't come back, I probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. On the other end of the phone, Yuan Chuling smiled and said indifferently. Then he added, "Boss, if it's convenient, you'd better call Miss Han. She hasn't been eating or drinking because of you. She's been absent-minded in class, and she has become a lot more haggard." "Got it. I'll call Miss Han now." Tan Xiao was still hesitating about whether to tell Han Qingwu that he was safe. After hearing Yuan Chuling's reminder, he instantly made up his mind. After hanging up Yuan Chuling's phone call, Tan Xiao immediately dialed the phone number that had called his cell phone 14 times. Although Tan Xiao did not know who this phone number belonged to, he had a faint feeling that this number must be Han Qingwu's. "Hello." After the phone call was connected, there was the unique voice of a Jiangnan woman. It was soft and especially pleasant to listen to. After hearing Han Qingwu's voice, Tan Xiao did not know what to say. "Tan Xiao, are you Tan Xiao? You left school without saying a word, and I didn't see you go home. Where did you go? If you don't think for yourself, think for your mother." There was a pause on the other end of the phone for a moment, and then there was Han Qingwu's roar of resentment. After Han Qingwu unconsciously said hello, she found that there was something wrong on the other end of the phone. She immediately looked at the phone number, and then she knew the identity of the owner of the phone on the other end. Poor Tan Xiao had stuck the phone to his ear to listen because he was nervous. As a result, his ears were numb from the vibration. Hearing the familiar complaint, Tan Xiao was not angry. Instead, there was a happy smile on his face. Although Han Qingwu's voice was loud, and she was criticizing Tan Xiao, her words revealed her care and love for Tan Xiao. This feeling made Tan Xiao enjoy it very much. At first, Tan Xiao tried to explain, but when he found that he did not have a chance to interrupt, he simply closed his mouth and listened to Han Qingwu. "Hey, are you Tan Xiao? Are you still there? Why aren't you saying anything?" Han Qingwu spoke for a long time before she realized that she was the one talking from the beginning to the end. There was no sound from the other end of the phone. Only then did she realize that she had lost her composure. At the same time, she was worried that she had called the wrong number. Hearing Han Qingwu's words, Tan Xiao almost laughed out loud. He could almost imagine Han Qingwu's nervous look at this time. "Miss Han, it's me. I'm sorry, I've been busy studying recently. I put my phone on silent mode and didn't hear the phone ring." Tan Xiao did not laugh at Han Qingwu, but explained patiently. "How can you be so disorganized and undisciplined? You even dared to threaten the teacher that you would transfer if he didn't approve your leave. Where did you learn all these bad habits?" When Han Qingwu heard Tan Xiao's calm explanation, she almost couldn't catch her breath. Just when she was about to curse, she suddenly remembered what Su Lingyun said when she visited Tan Xiao's home, and her heart softened again. Feeling the softness and powerlessness in Han Qingwu's words, the softest part of Tan Xiao's heart was inadvertently touched. "Miss Han, don't be angry. Being angry is bad for your health. It's not worth it." After a moment of silence, Tan Xiao deliberately teased, "Why don't you go to hell?" As soon as Tan Xiao's words fell, Han Qingwu, who was trying hard to control her emotions, finally exploded. She roared at the phone and then hung up the phone. That's right. Seeing that Han Qingwu had returned to her normal state, Tan Xiao also felt relieved and immediately dialed the last number. "Excuse me, are you Grandmaster Tang? My master is at the gambling table and temporarily can't answer the phone. However, my master has encountered a little trouble in Jingmen Island and wants to ask Grandmaster Tang for help. I don't know if it's convenient for Grandmaster Tang to come over. If Grandmaster Tang agrees, I will immediately book a ticket for Grandmaster Tang and arrange a shuttle." After the call was connected, Before Tan Xiao had the time to ask the identity of the other party, the other side of the phone respectfully greeted Tan Xiao and then excitedly told the whole story. Obviously, the other party had been waiting for Tan Xiao's call for a long time. Moreover, the other party had indeed encountered a huge trouble. Otherwise, the other party would have given Tan Xiao the opportunity to speak and finished everything in one breath. "Who is your master?" Tan Xiao suspected that the other party had called the wrong number, but he didn't immediately hang up the phone. Instead, he couldn't help but ask. "My master is Jia Ruidao. 10 days ago, my master had made a bet with you at the Long's dining hall. After master returned home, he told us about your situation, so we all know of your existence. 3 days ago, master fell into a predicament. If he can't solve this predicament, not only will he lose everything, but his life may also be in danger. I asked Grandmaster Tang to help my master." The other side of the phone froze for a moment and then eagerly asked for help. "I'm sorry, I think you might have found the wrong person. Although I have made a bet with Grandmaster Jia, but my gambling skill is not even 1/10,000th of Grandmaster Jia's. If even Grandmaster Jia can't solve the problem, then I certainly can't help." After understanding the whole story, Tan Xiao hung up the phone without hesitation. Although he had dealt with Jia Ruidao at the Long's dining hall and admired the other party's attainments in gambling, but Tan Xiao didn't think that he had a deep friendship with Jia Ruidao. More importantly, Tan Xiao didn't like gambling. Moreover, he hated gambling from the bottom of his heart. If it wasn't because he was forced by money, Tan Xiao wouldn't have entered the Health and Prosper Club, nor would he have agreed to help Long Jinglin to make a bet with Jia Ruidao. Chapter 50. Jingmen Island, in the presidential suite on the top floor of the Jarvis Hotel. The moment Tan Xiao hung up the phone in the hand of the middle-aged man standing by the window fell to the ground with a bang. His complexion also turned deathly pale. The next moment, the middle-aged man turned around and fiercely slapped the young man beside him. The pitiful young man was looking at the middle-aged man with a face full of expectation. He simply didn't guard against the middle-aged man's sudden attack and was directly slapped to the ground by the middle-aged man. "Eldest senior brother, you? Why did you hit me?" Zhang Taichun looked at Gong Dalong with a puzzled expression. One must know that Jia Ruidao had only received 3 disciples in his life, namely the eldest disciple, Gong Dalong, the second disciple, Zhang Taichun, and the third disciple, Jia Yele. Among them, Jia Yele was Jia Ruidao's son and also Jia Ruidao's personal disciple. The 3 of them had a very good relationship. They supported each other in their career and took care of each other in their daily life. They were no different from real brothers, which was a much-told story in the Shuangqing province. The only fly in the ointment was that Jia Yele loved vanity and had an extremely impulsive character. Therefore, Gong Dalong and Zhang Taichun often had to clean up his mess. Sometimes, Jia Ruidao also had to clean up his mess. This time, the reason why Jia Ruidao had to rush to Jingmen was because Jia Yele had lost a gamble. Moreover, he had lost very miserably. After losing so much, he actually revealed his father's name, which then provoked a big trouble. Jia Ruidao's name was only useful in the Shuangqing province and not everywhere in the country. Not to mention in Jingmen Island, which was an extremely xenophobic place. When Jia Yele revealed his father's name, not only did it not deter the other party, but it also made him suffer even more humiliating treatment. In just 3 days, the impetuous Jia Yele had lost 100 million under the other party's provocation. When Jia Yele finally realized that something was wrong, he had to call his second senior brother, Zhang Taichun. Zhang Taichun's gambling skills were all passed down by Jia Ruidao. Moreover, he was extremely fond of Jia Yele. After he rushed to Jingmen Island, he did not criticize Jia Yele. Instead, he was implicated by Jia Yele and jumped into the other party's meticulously arranged trap and lost another 50 million. "Why did I hit you? You actually still ask me why I hit you? Before Master's wife passed away, she handed over junior brother to us to take care of. But you, junior brother, went to Jingmen Island to gamble for half a month, yet you didn't even pay attention to him and didn't know anything about it. Zhang Taichun, do you know what kind of situation we will be in if Master falls this time? Zhang Taichun, do you know what kind of situation we'll be in if Master dies this time?" Not only will we go bankrupt, but our reputation in Shuangqing province will also be tarnished. With Master's character, do you think he will be able to live on after encountering such a thing? Gong Dalong roared at Zhang Taichun. Gong Dragon Zhang Zhang of Gong Tan, Gong, Gong, Dang of Gong, Gong, Gong of Gong, and said, Gong, and Gong, Zhang. I. Gong 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 with it. Gong 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 and said, Gong of Gong. Tan? He didn't even give me a chance to speak and hung up the phone. Gong Dalong's face became gloomy when he heard this, and he sighed helplessly. How can Tan Xiu be like this? This is a matter of one's loss and one's glory. Now, it's not only about the face of us, but also the face of the entire Shuangqing province. He doesn't see the big picture at all, Zhang Taichun said with a pale face. Master has already made it very clear to us that Tan Xiu is not someone from the casino, but someone outside the circle. Gong Dalong smiled bitterly and shook his head. Let's think of other ways for now. As for Tan Xiu, we can only use emotion and reason to slowly grind him down. After Tan Xiu hung up the phone with Gong Dalong, he tidied up the villa and returned to school. The main reason for Tan Xiu's leave this time was to complete the qi cultivation stage's body tempering. Since the body tempering had been completed, Tan Xiu naturally didn't need to continue staying outside. In his previous life, Tan Xiu was completely obsessed with cultivation and alchemy, talisman, and refining techniques. He almost didn't pay attention to the outside world, and was completely ignorant of the ways of the world. At the last moment, he was betrayed by his lover and confidant. In this life, since he had the heavenly art of cosmic genesis, a perfect peerless divine technique, and the 10,000 years of cultivation experience and knowledge from his previous life, Tan Xiu didn't need to worry about the slow progress of his strength. Therefore, he wanted to spend more time and energy on understanding the ways of the world and tempering his state of mind. When Tan Xiu entered the classroom, he found that his classmates were looking at him with unfamiliar gazes, and faintly, some unpleasant words floated into his ears. Relying on cheating to get first place in the monthly test, he really thinks that he is first. If he has the ability, then he should continue to get first place in this monthly test. If he really got first place, he wouldn't be so arrogant. Yang Jian from class 5 has been first place in the monthly test for several months in a row, and hasn't he been diligently studying every day? Tan Xiu probably saw that graduation is approaching, so he couldn't help but be crazy for once, so that everyone would remember him better. With his IQ, how could he really get first place? When he suddenly heard these words, Tan Xiu felt extremely uncomfortable in his heart. But after thinking for a while, Tan Xiu felt relieved. After all, he had fallen for such a long time, and his grades had always been at the bottom. If he suddenly got first place, it would already be good if others didn't suspect him, so how could they like and respect him? Perhaps the moment the results came out, it could cause a sensation and it could also shock some people, but as time passed, the sensational effect caused by the results would slowly disappear, and some people with ulterior motives would incite and spread rumors, and it would be replaced by jealousy, resentment, and even slander. Boss, don't care about them, they have nothing better to do, and if they don't gossip for a day, they will die. Seeing that Tan Xiu had returned, Yuan Chuling couldn't help but be overjoyed. After greeting him, he noticed that Tan Xiu's expression was a little abnormal and immediately understood what was going on, so he comforted him in a low voice. It's okay, we will use the results to slap them in the face later. Tan Xiu nodded, then opened the desk and was about to take out the books from inside to flip through. The moment he opened the desk, Tan Xiu was stunned. He found that he had only been away from school for 10 days, and the desk was already filled with white papers. Boss, I really admire your wise choice. You ran outside to be free and unfettered, and you don't have to face the endless torture of test papers. Boss, why do I feel like you've become whiter and taller? You couldn't have gone for plastic surgery, right? As Yuan Chuling spoke, he suddenly realized that something was wrong and cried out involuntarily. Yuan Chuling's voice was too loud, and it immediately attracted the attention of the classroom, and then everyone's eyes were focused on Tan Xiu. Hearing Yuan Chuling's words, Tan Xiu couldn't help but let out a thump, and his face changed a little. Although after the body tempering, Tan Xiao found that his height had jumped up a bit, but after making a few phone calls, Tan Xiao was thinking about things in his heart and forgot about the huge change in his height. Just as Tan Xiao was about to say a few words to explain, the words that came to his ears made him stunned. "Fatty, will you die if you don't brag? Tan Xiao still owes school fees. How can he have the money to go for plastic surgery? If plastic surgery can change my height, I will also go for plastic surgery." Fatty only knows how to shout all day to attract everyone's attention. Don't pay attention to this guy. Although Tan Xiao's height had changed, because he had been in class 10 for a total of more than a month, and most of the time he sat in his seat and didn't move, and didn't interact with the students in the class, this caused his presence in the class to be very weak. If it wasn't because of Su Xiangfei's deliberate provocation, the students in class 10 simply wouldn't care about a person like Tan Xiao, and they wouldn't care about Tan Xiao's height and the color of his skin. Tan Xiao thought that his height change would cause a sensation and suspicion, but the fact made him feel like a stone in his heart had fallen to the ground. Everyone just rolled their eyes at Yuan Chuling, ridiculed Yuan Chuling a few words, and then went to busy themselves with their own things, no longer paying attention to Yuan Chuling. Could it be that I really saw wrong? Yuan Chuling looked at Tan Xiao with a puzzled face, and his mouth couldn't help but whisper, "My eyes have always been very sharp, there's no reason for me to make a mistake. Could it be that I've been doing the test papers recently?" Hearing Yuan Chuling's whisper, Tan Xiao was completely relieved. In the entire Xingqing No. 1 high school, Yuan Chuling was the person who was closest to him. If even Yuan Chuling wasn't sure if there was a huge change in his body, then others wouldn't be able to be sure. As for his family, Tan Xiao wasn't worried at all. 17 or 18 years old was originally the time when one's body would explode, and he would go home once a month, and his mother wouldn't necessarily pay attention to his height every time. Suddenly seeing his height jump up a bit, his mother might be surprised, or even surprised, but she would never doubt or be afraid. After chatting with Tan Xiao for a while, Yuan Chuling began to immerse himself in studying. Perhaps Yuan Chuling had completely let go of the knot in his heart, or perhaps after the change of environment, Yuan Chuling's mentality had also changed. Tan Xiao could see that Yuan Chuling wasn't as playful as before, but was studying very hard. After glancing at the test papers on the desk, Tan Xiao crumpled them all into a ball and threw them into the trash can. Tan Xiao didn't want to waste precious time on boring exercises and test papers. Wealth, partner, method, and location. Wealth is the most important thing. What I should do next is to find a stable way to earn money, not the college entrance examination. The path of cultivation paid particular attention to the words method, partner, wealth, and location. With the heavenly art of quintessential space genesis, Tan Xiao didn't need to worry about the method of cultivation. It was very likely that the Earth was in the age of Dharma decline, and apart from himself, there wasn't any other cultivator. Tan Xiao also didn't think about looking for a fellow cultivator or a fellow Taoist. As for a place to cultivate, the Heavenly Palace on Walled Hill Village was already under construction, so Tan Xiao didn't need to worry about it for the time being. Only regarding money, Tan Xiao had no choice but to pay attention to it. Chapter 51. As the ancients said, without wealth, one cannot cultivate the Tao. In the primary stage of cultivation, one must put their mind and time into cultivation to the greatest extent, and correspondingly, there was no more time to make money. Without a certain material foundation, it was very difficult to cultivate the Tao. However, the current Tan Xiao was poor and had no material foundation to speak of. Although Tan Xiao had obtained the Southgate town's Yaning courtyard by chance, but Tan Xiao was very fond of the Yaning courtyard's location and decoration style. He was also reluctant to sell the Yaning courtyard. Moreover, this villa was given to Tan Xiao by Long Zhengyu. It was impossible for Tan Xiao to sell the villa, otherwise, he would definitely be looked down upon by Long Zhengyu. There was no way to cash out the Yaning courtyard. Tan Xiao had less than 10,000 yuan in cash on him. It could be said that he was a veritable poor cultivator. If not for Long Zhengyu's promise to help build the Heavenly Palace, Tan Xiao would not even have the means to settle his own cultivation place. Fortunately, although Tan Xiao's cultivation was at the primary stage, he was not a true primary cultivator. Therefore, he could spend some of his time and effort on making money, and did not need to spend all of his time and experience on cultivation. It seems that I still have to start from my old profession. After thinking for a long time, Tan Xiu's eyebrows slowly stretched out, and an idea appeared in his mind. The so-called old profession in Tan Xiu's mind was not the gambling that Yuan Chuling had mentioned, but the Tao of immortal pills that he was good at. Although it would be too shocking to sell the pills from the immortal world on Earth, and many of the ingredients for refining the immortal pills could not be found on Earth, this did not prevent Tan Xiu from adapting to the situation on Earth. He could process and change the pills according to the actual situation on Earth, so that it could be completely accepted and liked by the people on Earth. The food and beverage business consumes too much time and energy. Moreover, if I want to make it big, I need to spend an astronomical amount of money, unless I cooperate with others. The first idea that came to Tan Xiu's mind was to improve the seasoning recipe and make money through the food and beverage business. However, he hesitated because the seasoning recipe itself could not be sold at a high price. Only by combining it with the food and beverage business could it be sold at a sky-high price. However, with Tan Xiu's current situation, he could not afford the food and beverage business. Cooperating with others was a good way, but it was very likely that he would be under the control of others. Moreover, it was not easy to gain the trust of others. Aside from food and beverages, there's also alcohol, cosmetics, and healthcare products. Tang Xiu racked his brains and thought of the fields that might be used after the advancement of medicinal pills. However, Tang Xiu found that he knew nothing about these fields, which gave him a headache. Eldest brother, you've been sitting in the classroom for a long time, haven't you found anything unusual? After the bell rang, Yuan Chuling put down his book, pushed Tang Xiu's arm and asked in a low voice. Boss, you have been sitting in the classroom for a long time. Didn't you find anything unusual? After the bell rang, Yuan Chuling put down his book and pushed Tang Xiu's arm, asking in a low voice. Yuan Chuling looked as if he had been defeated by Tang Xiu's words. He then moved his mouth closer to Tang Xiu's ear, preparing to tell Tang Xiu about the recent happenings in his class. But before Yuan Chuling could speak, Tang Xiu stood up and walked straight out of the classroom. Yuan Chuling opened his mouth in surprise. He wanted to ask Tang Xiu the reason, but when he saw a beautiful figure outside the classroom, he suddenly curled his lips in disdain. You really know how to pretend. I thought you really didn't notice that Qing Yannan didn't come to the morning study. Looking at Tan Xiu striding towards Qing Yannan, Yuan Chuling's face showed a playful look. After not seeing him for 10 days, boss has actually become so bold. Is he not afraid of the gossip of the students in the class? Yuan Chuling thought in his heart. He also stood up and slowly walked out of the classroom. Yuan Chuling and Tan Xiu were sitting in the innermost part of the classroom. The two of them noticed the arrival of Qing Yannan. The others naturally also noticed the arrival of Qing Yannan. Although Qing Yannan only came to Class 10 a month earlier than Tan Xiu, she had long ago won the recognition of Class 10 with her beautiful appearance and candid personality. She was also named as one of the top 10 beauties of Xingqing No. 1 High School. Almost half of the boys in Class 10 liked Qing Yannan. Seeing Tan Xiu actually went straight to Qing Yannan, the other boys suddenly became nervous. As graduation season approached, many people saw that they had no hope of entering the college entrance examination. They were all ready to confess to their favorite girl and have a vigorous love affair. Qing Yannan was the target of countless boys in Class 10 who intended to confess to Qing Yannan. At the same time, they were also secretly guarding against other people getting close to Qing Yannan. Tan Xiu, Qing Yannan is mine. Don't even think about it. A toad wanting to eat swan meat. Get out of my way. Us brothers haven't even confessed yet. It's not your turn yet. As soon as Tan Xiu walked to the classroom door, he was stopped by several boys. They looked at Tan Xiu with a face full of ridicule. Impressively, Su Duanxin and Tan Lichuan were among them. Su Duanxin and Tan Lichuan stopped Tan Xiu's colleagues. Su Xiangfei magically pulled out a bunch of roses from his back and ran to Qing Yannan with a face full of joy. Get out of my way. Qing Yannan's life is in danger. Tan Xiu saw several of his classmates in front of him. He wanted to pick them up and throw them away one by one. but he was worried that his relationship with his classmates would become strained. He could not help but softly scold them. "Who are you trying to fool? Do you think we are 3-year-old children? Even if Qing Yennan's life is in danger, it's not your turn to save her. The class leader has already gone to save the beauty." Hearing the ridicule of Su Duanxin, Tan Lichuan, and others, Tan Xiu knew that he had overestimated the IQ of this group of students. He also regretted that he did not throw these bastards in front of him into the garbage heap. In the next moment, a figure slid through the air and landed heavily on the ground. As this figure landed, a rain of roses also floated down from the sky. "If you don't want to die, get out of my way. Otherwise, you will end up like this little bastard." Before everyone had time to react to what had happened, a loud voice rang out outside the corridor. Then, a fierce-looking bearded man appeared in everyone's sight. It was also at this time that everyone realized that Qing Yennan's hands were behind her back, and there was a dagger on her neck. The figure that was thrown just now was impressively the first to run out of the classroom, Su Xiangfei. The roses in his hand that he was going to give to Qing Yannan had already turned into a rose rain and fell to the ground. His whole body also fainted. The sudden turn of events scared all the students of Class 10 silly, and the noisy classroom instantly quieted down. Although Class 10's discipline was the worst in the whole third grade group, the boys of Class 10 were also the most naughty in the third grade group. Fighting, skipping classes, and puppy love were commonplace for them. After all, they were a group of children. The fierceness of the bearded man in front of them had completely broken their cognition. "All of you, go into the classroom one by one. If anyone dares to run around or call the police, I will kill this bitch, and then I will hack all of your classmates to death." While the students of Class 10 were in a daze, the bearded man kicked several people who were blocking the classroom door into the classroom. Then he sternly scolded several students who were standing in front of the classroom door. The pitiful few students in front of him had the opportunity to escape, but under the fierce gaze of the bearded man, they had no choice but to obediently return to the classroom. Close the front door of the classroom, and then all the boys move the desks to block the classroom door. "Hurry up, whoever dares to not move, I will kill that person." Seeing that all the students in the class were under his control, the bearded man took 2 steps forward, grabbed Su Xiangfei's collar, and dragged Su Xiangfei into the classroom, and then loudly shouted. Under the bearded man's shouts, although the students of Class 10 were helpless, they still closed the front door of the classroom, and then slowly moved the desks to the classroom door to block the front door. Seeing that a group of students had all succumbed to his tyranny, the bearded man's eyes couldn't help but reveal a proud look. His taut nerves gradually relaxed, and the dagger was no longer tightly pressed against Qing Yannan's neck, but from time to time waved it twice, excitedly directing the students of Class 10 to work. "Fuck your mother, who do you think you are, coming to our class to show off your strength?" Just when Tan Xiu saw that the time was right to make his move, a loud shout suddenly sounded from the back of the classroom. It was Yuan Chuling who fiercely smashed the desk in his hand towards the bearded man. When it came to height and build, Yuan Chuling was not inferior to the bearded man. When he aggressively roared, the classroom violently trembled for a moment. Seeing Yuan Chuling bravely step forward, the eyes of the students of Class 10 couldn't help but brighten up, and their faces revealed a hopeful look. If Yuan Chuling's attack was successful, not only would Qing Yannan be able to escape the fate of being a ruthless flower, but the other students in the class also wouldn't have to suffer the bearded man's abuse. Just when the students of Class 10 couldn't help but cheer for Yuan Chuling, something happened that made them dumbfounded. The bearded man seemed to have foreseen this. He grabbed Qing Yannan's hand and suddenly exerted force, lifting Qing Yannan up, and then directly put her in front of his body to block. At the same time, the dagger in his other hand quickly stabbed towards Yuan Chuling's stomach. "Little bastard, I've been guarding against you for a long time. I didn't expect that you would really make a move. Since it's like this, I don't mind killing the chicken to warn the monkey. I'll get rid of you first." Seeing Yuan Chuling's panic-stricken eyes, the bearded man's face revealed a sinister smile. "No." Seeing that his desk didn't hit the bearded man, but instead hit Qing Yannan, Yuan Chuling's furious face turned into panic. Unable to restrain his force, Yuan Chuling couldn't help but shout. "No!" Clearly seeing the actions of Yuan Chuling and the bearded man, the eyes of the students of Class 10 also popped out, and their mouths uncontrollably issued cries of alarm. Chapter 52. No. Looking at the desk that was about to hit her head, Qing Yannan also let out a cry of despair. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her heart was filled with endless regret. Qing Yannan knew that she was too impulsive this time. It was her impulsiveness that brought her death. It was her impulsiveness that put her classmates in a desperate situation. If time could turn back, if God gave her another chance, Qing Yannan would never have interfered in the case her sister was investigating, nor did she take the initiative to follow one of the suspects. Qing Yannan originally just felt that studying was too boring and wanted to add some spice to her life. It was just that Qing Yannan never dreamed that after her sister investigated the case for nearly half a year without any clues, she would accidentally stumble upon the truth. What was even more unexpected for Qing Yannan was that the gangster actually followed her and even dared to make a move on her at school. Thinking about the information recorded in the case, Qing Yannan knew that she was wrong. Not only did her recklessness not help her sister, but it may have put the police in an extremely passive position and put herself and her classmates in extreme danger. Just when Qing Yannan thought that she was definitely going to die, she felt the bearded gangster's hand loosen, and her body softly fell to the ground. Then she saw that the desk that was about to hit her actually hit the bearded gangster. At the critical moment, Tan Xiu made a move, and he chose to do it when the bearded gangster was the most proud. Tan Xiu directly stretched out his two hands and gently placed them on the bearded gangster's shoulders. The bearded bandit didn't have the time to react as Tang Xiu directly crushed the bearded bandit's shoulder blades with two crisp cracking sounds. After the poor bearded gangster's shoulder blades were crushed, not only could he no longer lift Qing Yannan with his right hand to block the impact of the desk, the dagger in his left hand that was aimed at Yuan Chuling also fell to the ground powerlessly, and he had to watch the desk hit his head. "Rat, how dare you!" The bearded gangster seemed to be completely enraged. He roared and then hooked his foot to roll up Qing Yannan, who was about to fall to the ground, and kicked her toward Yuan Chuling. At the same time, the bearded gangster tilted his head back and was about to use it as a hammer to smash Tan Xiu. Tang Xiu's eyes couldn't help but flash with astonishment upon seeing that the bearded man ignored the severe pain caused by his broken shoulder blades and made the most advantageous counterattack for himself in the first moment. If it were an ordinary person, they would probably be directly smashed by the bearded gangster's head and lose the ability to fight. Not only could the bearded gangster deal with the threat coming from behind, but he could also minimize the threat from Yuan Chuling to him. Unfortunately, the bearded gangster's opponent was Tan Xiu. Moreover, it was Tan Xiu, who had just finished tempering his body and achieved great success in qi cultivation. In the face of the bearded gangster's fierce attack, Tan Xiu only let out a soft sound of surprise. He then reached out to grab the bearded gangster's collar and threw him in the direction of the garbage at the back of the classroom. Then he stretched out his arms and grabbed Qing Yannan before the desk hit Qing Yannan. With a muffled clang, Yuan Chuling's desk hit the ground heavily. Not only were the papers and books on the desk scattered all over the classroom, but the desk itself was also smashed into pieces. But at this time, everyone's attention was not on the broken desk and the scattered books. Everyone's eyes were focused on the bearded gangster lying in the garbage. The place where Tan Xiu stood was 10 meters away from the garbage at the back corner of the classroom, but he just lightly flung the bearded gangster into the garbage. Looking at the bearded gangster's height of nearly 1.9 meters and his burly body, then looking at Tan Xiu's height of less than 1.8 meters and Tan Xiu's body that was as thin as a bamboo pole, the students of Class 10 rubbed their eyes again and again, suspecting that there was something wrong with their eyes. The students of Class 10 were more willing to believe that the bearded gangster was thrown out by Yuan Chuling, but they did not dare to believe that the bearded gangster was thrown out by Tan Xiu. But seeing Yuan Chuling also looking at Tan Xiu with a dull face, everyone knew that the bearded gangster could only be subdued and dealt with by Tan Xiu, not Yuan Chuling. After being fiercely smashed by Tang Xiu into the garbage dump, even though the bearded bandit had a sturdy body, his 5 viscera and 6 bowels were all dislocated, and black blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. The bearded gangster looked at Tan Xiao with a face full of unwillingness. He weakly said a few words, and then completely fainted. Seeing the bearded gangster fainted, the students of class 10 subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief, and then the quiet classroom immediately turned into a chaotic market. Some people immediately screamed and called the police, some people directly opened the classroom door and ran out, and some people even burst into tears. Tan Xiao, since you are so powerful, why didn't you save us earlier? Why did you let us be kicked away by the bearded gangster? Just as Tan Xiao was about to put down Qing Yannan in his arms, a voice full of resentment suddenly sounded in his ears, making Tan Xiao could not help but frown. Tan Xiao just wanted to explain, but he did not have time to open his mouth. He heard the voices of other students. That's right, you obviously have such great strength, but you deliberately hid it and deliberately watched the students get beaten. What is your intention? Tan Xiao, the gangster almost entered the classroom at the same time as you. Did you introduce the gangster into the school, or what happened just now was a self-made play? Hearing the discussion of the students in the class, Tan Xiao was completely shocked. He did not expect that his help not only did not get a word of gratitude, but also so many complaints and doubts. For a time, Tan Xiao fell into silence. You have wrongly accused Tan Xiao. If you have paid attention to the Shuangqing Daily these 2 days, you will find that this gangster is a wanted criminal on the Ministry of Public Security's A-level wanted list. They have committed crimes all over the country, selling human organs for profit, and have committed more than 30 cases of murder. Seeing that Tan Xiao was wrongly accused, Qing Yannan was also stunned, and then softly defended Tan Xiao. Nanan, don't be fooled by Tan Xiao. Since you know what the gangster looks like, Tan Xiao naturally also knows what the gangster looks like. Can't he just find someone who looks like the gangster to play the role of a gangster? Tan Xiao is weak and sickly. He often faints and falls to the ground. In his 3 years of high school, he has never passed any of the sports tests. Do you think he can be the opponent of a murderer? Tan Xiao must want to pursue you, but he is afraid of being rejected by you, so he made up this drama of a hero saving the beauty to move you and capture your heart. Not only did Qing Yannan's explanation not make everyone believe it, but it made everyone even more excited. Boss, you are obviously wrongly accused. Why don't you explain? After Yuan Chuling escaped from death, his face was full of fear. Seeing that all the students in the class misunderstood Tan Xiao, he could not help but urge. Those who believe you will naturally believe you. Those who don't believe you will not believe you no matter how much you explain. Tan Xiao indifferently glanced at the students in the class and did not speak. Instead, he slowly walked to his desk and sat down. Tan Xiao could calm down, but the other students in class 10 could not. Those who questioned Tan Xiao were only a small number of students. Most of the students did not speak. After all, the gangster's ferocious expression did not seem to be acting. Yuan Chuling's roar and panic at the critical moment also did not seem to be acting. Not to mention the bruises on Qing Yannan's wrist and the vomiting of blood. Tan Xiao did not speak, and Qing Yannan also firmly stood on Tan Xiao's side. Most of the students were silent and did not speak. Those who questioned and cursed Tan Xiao gradually became silent. 10 minutes later, the criminal police team of the municipal bureau arrived. The police leading them was Qing Xueme, who had met Tan Xiao once before. Just as Tan Xiao was about to step forward and greet Qing Xueme, Qing Yannan took a step forward and walked in front of Qing Xueme before Tan Xiao. But before Qing Yannan had time to speak, Qing Xueme raised her palm and fiercely slapped Qing Yannan's face. Qing Yannan, who allowed you to touch my case file? Who allowed you to act on your own? Who allowed you to find clues without informing me in time? After slapping Qing Yannan, Qing Xueme asked sternly. Sister, I'm sorry I was wrong. Qing Yannan did not wait for her sister to comfort her. Instead, she got a slap. She felt so wrong that she wanted to cry. But when she saw her sister's red eyes and the concern in her sister's eyes, she had to hold back the tears in her eyes and apologized softly. When Tan Xiao saw Qing Xueme slapping Qing Yannan, he was very disgusted and almost couldn't help but hit Qing Xueme. But after listening to the conversation between Qing Xueme and Qing Yannan, he couldn't help but feel lucky that he didn't act impulsively just now. While Cheng Xuemei and Cheng Yannan were communicating with each other, several other members of the criminal police unit were checking the injuries of the bearded man. At the same time, some of them were asking the students of Class 10 about what happened. Captain Cheng, the injury of the suspect, Xiao Baifeng, is not optimistic. Not only his internal organs are displaced, but several of his ribs are also broken, one of which is embedded in his heart. The chance of him being rescued is very small. While Hu Wenxiu was speaking, he couldn't help glancing at Tan Xiu. From the mouth of the students of Class 10, Hu Wenxiu learned that it was Tan Xiu who subdued and dealt with Xiao Baifeng. Recalling the last time he dealt with Tan Xiu fainted because his body was too weak. Hu Wenxiu felt that what happened today was really strange. He couldn't believe everything he heard. However, when he asked several people in a row and found that all the confessions were consistent, Hu Wenxiu had to believe one thing, that the thin Tan Xiu had really subdued Xiao Baifeng. Chapter 53. What? Xiao Baifeng's life is in danger? How is that possible? Isn't he known as the unkillable yellow ox in the team? Hearing Hu Wenxiu's report, Cheng Xuemei could no longer continue exchanging pleasantries with Cheng Yannan and exclaimed out loud. The reason why Xiao Baifeng had the nickname of Yellow Ox was that he had extraordinary strength, thick skin, and was particularly resistant to beatings. On the other hand, it was because of his extremely stubborn temper. Once he decided on something, even 10 oxen would not be able to pull him back. It was precisely because of Xiao Baifeng's temper and the abilities he possessed that he occupied an absolute core position in the team. However, when she heard that such a monster had fallen in the hands of a weak teenager, Cheng Xuemei couldn't help but feel that it was a bit unreal. One had to know that even Cheng Xuemei herself did not have absolute confidence in subduing Xiao Baifeng. "Hello, Tan Xiu. We meet again. Do you still remember me?" Cheng Xuemei stared at Tan Xiu for a moment. Finally, she stretched out her palm towards Tan Xiu and greeted him with a smile. "Hello, Officer Cheng. It's nice to see you again." Seeing the inquisitive and playful look in Cheng Xuemei's eyes, Tan Xiu felt a chill in his heart. He wanted to refuse the handshake, but after thinking about it, he still stretched out his hand towards Cheng Xuemei. When the two palms touched and overlapped in midair, Cheng Xuemei's eyes flashed with a trace of pride, and she suddenly exerted her strength. Just when Cheng Xuemei thought that she should be able to test out Tan Xiu's strength, she felt that Tan Xiu's palm was soft and slippery. Before Cheng Xuemei could react to what had happened, Tan Xiu's palm had already slipped away from her grasp. "Good boy, so you really do have some kung fu. Then I'll have to test you." Cheng Xuemei did not go all out just now. After seeing Tan Xiu easily break free from her suppression, her eyes lit up, and then a look of excitement appeared on her face. "Officer Cheng, business is more important. Besides, I saved Yanin. Is this how you treat Yanin's savior?" Tan Xiu furrowed his brows and hurriedly reminded when he sensed the overflowing battle intent radiating from Cheng Xuemei's body. "You used to call me sister. Why are you calling me Officer Cheng now? Do you have a guilty conscience?" Cheng Xuemei hesitated for a moment. Then she glared at Cheng Xuemei and asked sternly. Tan Xiu glanced at the nervous Cheng Yannan and teased, "I want to continue calling you sister, but I'm afraid Yanin will have a problem with it." Cheng Yannan was watching the show happily. She obviously did not expect that the flames of war would suddenly burn on her. When she heard Tan Xiu's teasing words, she couldn't help but blush for a moment, and her expression became bashful. "Yanin?" When she heard Tan Xiu's words, Cheng Xuemei was also dumbfounded. Her eyes swept back and forth between Tan Xiu and Cheng Yannan several times, full of doubts. However, in public, Cheng Xuemei could not openly ask Tan Xiu about the relationship between Cheng Yannan and Tan Xiu, and it was even more inconvenient to point it out. In the end, Cheng Xuemei glared at Tan Xiu fiercely and ended the test. "Tan Xiu, Yannan has alerted the enemy. When we arrived at the bandits' stronghold, they were already gone. If they learn about what happened at the White Tiger Peak, those bandits will probably retaliate against you. Do you need us to send someone to protect you? Or do you want to stay in our public security bureau for a few days?" After making the statement, Cheng Xuemei hesitated for a moment and asked Tan Xiu, Tan Xiu was stunned when he heard this. Then he shook his head and said, "Officer Cheng, thank you. If it's convenient, please arrange a few people to protect my mother secretly. I can handle it myself." Cheng Xueme stared at Tan Xiu for a moment. When she found that Tan Xiu's eyes were firm and full of confidence, she nodded and agreed to Tan Xiu's request. Then, she quickly left with the crime squad. "Tan Xiu, you did a good job today. If it weren't for you, it is estimated that the lives of your classmates would be in danger. The school will give you a reward later." Before the crime squad arrived at the school, a group of school leaders led by Wei Zhentai rushed to the classroom of Class 10. However, their main task at that time was to comfort the frightened students, so they had no time to talk to Tan Xiu. When Wei Zhentai wanted to talk to Tan Xiu, the police began to ask Tan Xiu, Qing Yannan, and Yuan Chuling for statements. However, while Tan Xiu, Qing Yannan, and Yuan Chuling cooperated with the police to make statements, Wei Zhentai and others did not stay idle. They had already learned the details of what happened from the mouths of the students of Class 10. When they learned that Qing Yannan almost died and Yuan Chuling almost died, Wei Zhentai and others' hearts could not help but hang in their throats. As for Su Xiangfei, who loved to show off and was kicked away by Xiaofeng, no one paid any attention to him at all. Principal Wei, the reward is secondary. I think regulating the school's safety management is the top priority. If something like today's incident is reported by the news media, Tan Xiu was not confused by the reward mentioned by Wei Zhentai, but said indifferently. Hearing the first half of Tan Xiu's sentence, Wei Zhentai was still unhappy, thinking that Tan Xiu was a little arrogant. But when Tan Xiu's second half of the sentence came out, Wei Zhentai's face instantly changed. He looked at Tan Xiu with a deep shock in his eyes, but also with gratitude. For a school, the most important thing was the number of students. The more students, the more income the school would have, and the higher the school's income, the more teachers would be able to be invested, thus creating a good enrollment rate, and with a higher enrollment rate, more students would be attracted, and so on and so forth, forming a virtuous cycle. However, if the safety of the students in the school could not be guaranteed, what was the use of a high enrollment rate? Which student would dare to risk his life to come to Xingqing City No. 1 High School to study? Student Tan Xiu is right, I will immediately rectify the school's safety regulations. Wei Zhentai replied to Tan Xiu with sweat dripping down his face, and then immediately left in a hurry, leaving the other school leaders looking at each other in dismay. I didn't expect student Tan Xiu not only to have amazing academic results, but also to have such great foresight. Admirable. Vice Principal Lu Yunyong looked at Tan Xiu with admiration, and then quickly left. What happened in the school today was too sensational. The entire Xingqing City No. 1 High School had to carry out a crisis of public relations in order to escape this disaster, or else Xingqing City No. 1 High School would definitely be pushed to the heart of the storm, which would seriously affect the school's reputation and image, and would also have an extremely negative impact on the next year's enrollment. You really make people worry. Either you disappear for 10 days to half a month, or you cause such a big commotion. Do you think the teacher's heart is not big enough? When all the school leaders and teachers had left, only Han Qingwu remained. Han Qingwu originally planned to harshly criticize Tan Xiu after he returned, to let Tan Xiu know how powerful she was, but when she found out that 2 of her classmates had a trip to the gates of hell, the scene of the car accident from a year ago emerged in her mind again. Thinking back to the scene from a year ago when Tang Xiu pulled her back from the gates of hell, Han Qingwu's resentment towards Tan Xiu instantly disappeared, and her gaze towards Tan Xiu was full of tenderness and sweetness. Today's scene was so similar to the scene from a year ago, the same disregard for personal safety, the same do not look back, and the same sacrifice of oneself to save others. It was just that today's Tan Xiu was luckier than Tan Xiu a year ago, as he did not hurt himself. Miss Han, I'm sorry for troubling you during this time. Feeling the heat in Han Qingwu's eyes, Tan Xiu's eyes drifted and responded softly. It's okay, you did very well today, I'm proud of you. Next time when you encounter something like this, remember to protect yourself and not let yourself get hurt. When Han Qingwu saw Tan Xiu's blushing face, her face could not help but show a playful look. Thinking of the scene where Tan Xiu forced a kiss on her in the office, she felt a great sense of revenge. While Han Qingwu and Tan Xiu were talking, the desks in the classroom were restored to their original state. Except for the sporadic blood spots in the corridor and in the garbage dump, it seemed as if nothing had happened in the classroom. However, the quiet and almost eerie atmosphere in the classroom reminded everyone that something big had happened today, and it was an earth-shattering big thing. After greeting Tan Xiu, Han Qingwu walked to the podium. "Students, what happened today was an accident. I'm very sad that something like this happened, and I think everyone is also very sad. Fortunately, under the brave struggle of Tan Xiu and Yuan Chuling, the danger was finally averted. Let us give a warm round of applause to thank Tan Xiu and Yuan Chuling for coming forward at the critical moment." On the podium, Han Qingwu was like a queen, valiant and heroic, full of aura. Han Qingwu's words seemed to have a magical power, quickly dispelling the panic in the hearts of the students in the class. Slowly, this class unexpectedly became an ideological education class. Han Qingwu traced back to the past, from the chaotic heroes of the Qin and Han dynasties to the modern revolutionary martyrs, all the way to how Tan Xiu bravely came forward to save her from the car accident a year ago, and finally summed up today's events. In Han Qingwu's mouth, Tan Xiu and Yuan Chuling impressively became heroes who could lift the 9 tripod cauldrons, bravely conquer 3 armies, face death with equanimity, and talk and laugh as if they were peerless heroes. All the students listened with their blood boiling. The students of Class 10 only knew that Tan Xiu had a car accident shortly after the start of the second year of high school, but they didn't know how Tan Xiu got into the car accident. At this time, when they learned that Tan Xiu actually got into a car accident in order to save Han Qingwu's life, the eyes of the students of Class 10 instantly changed when they looked at Tan Xiu. If Cheng Yannan was only the object of love for most of the boys in the class, then Han Qingwu was definitely the goddess that all the students in the class admired. Han Qingwu completely surpassed Cheng Yannan in terms of figure, appearance, and temperament. More importantly, the aura that Han Qingwu's words and actions revealed was something that Cheng Yannan simply couldn't have. Han Qingwu instantly shifted the attention of the students of Class 10 from the gangster incident to Tan Xiu. When she exhorted the students in the class to be sure not to spread what happened at school today, everyone responded in unison. But Tan Xiu, who was sitting at the back of the classroom, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Han Qingwu with hatred in his eyes. He knew that with Han Qingwu's publicity, it was almost impossible for him to spend the last month of high school peacefully. Chapter 54. As Tan Xiu expected, after class, Tan Xiu's desk was surrounded by people. While expressing their gratitude to Tan Xiu for stepping forward today, they were also very curious about Tan Xiu's strength. Some people also asked about the specific details of the car accident more than a year ago. It took Tan Xiu a lot of effort to send away this group of enthusiastic and curious students. "Tan Xiu, do you think the gang from White Wolf Peak will come to the campus to seek revenge on us?" When there was finally no one around Tan Xiu's desk, Cheng Yannan, who was sitting in front of him, suddenly turned around and asked softly, "After going through today's incident, I think both the police and the university will increase the security precautions." "It's unlikely that the gangsters will continue to come to the campus to cause trouble," replied Tan Xiu seriously after thinking about it. "Thank you." Cheng Yannan seemed relieved when she heard the words, and then said absent-mindedly. Clearly seeing Cheng Yannan's different reaction from usual, Tan Xiu could not help but be stunned. However, Tan Xiu quickly understood what was going on. Even if Cheng Yannan was usually careless, she was still a girl, and a little girl who was not even 18 years old. She was suddenly kidnapped by murderers and almost lost her life. Anyone else would have lost half of their soul. Thinking of this, Tan Xiu subconsciously looked at his deskmate, only to find that his deskmate was much quieter than usual. He was silent when he just cooperated with the police to make a statement, and now his face was pale and he was in a state of absent-mindedness. "Fatty, are you okay?" Tan Xiu pushed Yuan Chuling and asked worriedly. "I'm fine." Suddenly awakened by Tan Xiu, Yuan Chuling's body quivered, and he looked around blankly. After realizing that he was sitting in the classroom, he hurriedly shook his head. "I'm fine. My vest is drenched in sweat." Seeing Yuan Chuling's reaction, Tan Xiu couldn't help but glare at him, then said softly, "Fatty, it's over, we're safe now." "Boss, don't you think it's very ugly after death? Once a person dies, does their soul really dissipate?" Yuan Chuling didn't answer Lu Ming's question. "I'm not too sure about that. Why don't you try jumping out of the window?" Tan Xiao tilted his head and thought for a moment before he seriously suggested, "Go to hell." Yuan Chuling obviously hadn't recovered from the shock. He was stunned for a long time before he realized that Tan Xiao was joking with him. Then he threw a punch at Tan Xiao. "I don't want to explore such a deep philosophical question, so it's better to leave the great task of dying to you." Tan Xiao stopped Yuan Chuling's fist and joked with a smile. "Boss, I always thought I was very powerful. Not only was I strong, but I was also bold. I thought I would definitely be a big hero in the future." With the sound of a keyboard, a man wearing rimless transparent glasses said confidently, "Third brother is dead. This revenge must be avenged. No matter who killed third brother, we can't let this matter go." The police deliberately leaked the news of third brother's death and then set up a trap in Xingqing No. 1 High School. "We just did the opposite and didn't attack the students of Xingqing No. 1 High School. There is a saying that a thief can't guard against a thief for 1,000 days. They would never dream that they are standing right under their noses watching them make a fool of themselves. I guess they are all waiting for us to walk into the trap." The other two people in the room had been staring in the direction of Class 10 of Xingqing No. 1 High School with binoculars. Their faces were gloomy and their bodies were also emitting cold air. All the information on Tan Xiao, Yuan Chuling, and Qing Yannan and their family members is out. Everyone take a look first and then discuss the target. Suddenly, the man with rimless glasses waved the A4 paper in his hand and shouted to the people in the room. Hearing the words of the man with rimless glasses, the people immediately rushed forward excitedly and distributed the information that had just been printed out. This woman is actually the sister of the cop. No wonder she is so nosy and bold. Tan Xiao's sports scores have been failing for a long time, and he had a car accident a year ago. Is he in a state of confusion? Damn, it must be this damn fatty. It must be this damn fatty. He looks simple, but I didn't expect him to be an invisible rich second generation. He also learned Sanda and Taekwondo, and his strength is amazing. After reading the information on Tan Xiao, Yuan Chuling, and Qing Yannan several times, the five people directly threw the information on Tan Xiao and Qing Yannan aside and carefully read the information on Yuan Chuling. Because the information on Tan Xiao and Qing Yannan was too simple. In the column of social relations, Tan Xiao's mother was only written as his mother, and his mother, Su Lingyun, was from the countryside. After discovering that Tang Xiao was not only physically weak, but also mentally retarded, making it impossible for him to be the murderer of Xiao Yinfeng, nor was he a threat to them, they decisively dispelled the idea of dealing with Tang Xiao's mother. As for Qing Yannan's information, it was even weirder. She only wrote that she was an elder sister. Although Qing Yannan's combat power was good, and she seemed to have learned military boxing, and her attainments in military boxing were very high. However, since she could be restrained by Yuan Chuling, she should not be able to kill Yuan Chuling. More importantly, Qing Yannan's sister was a police officer. Even if these gangsters had 100 guts, they would not dare to take the initiative to attack a police officer. Yuan Chuling's father is not simple. On the surface, it seems to be just a technology-limited company, but it is inextricably linked to the government, and its annual profits are hundreds of millions. It also has a security confidentiality certificate for military confidential business consulting services. What on earth does his company do? Strange, this is too strange. Did we offend a big shot in the military? But this resume shows that he is just an outstanding entrepreneur. His company should be doing more work in the field of mapping and smart cities. I understand mapping, but what the hell is a smart city? When everyone finished reading the information about Yuan Chuling's father, Yuan Zhengxian, the group of gangsters were all confused and could not figure out the situation. Yuan Zhengshuan's woman, Zhao Jing, is not simple. She did not attach herself to Yuan Zhengxian, but set up a heavy industry company on her own. Moreover, it has developed quite well. Although the profits are not as good as Yuan Jingshuan's technology company for the time being, when it comes to long-term prospects, it is not inferior to Yuan Jingshuan's technology company. Zhao Jing's character seems to be very strong. She actually directly divorced Yuan Zhengxian because she heard that Yuan Zhengxian was close to another woman. She did not need any evidence at all. This is not the courage of an ordinary woman. I don't know what the brains of these two people are made of. One is more powerful than the other. The money they earn in a year is enough for us to earn for a lifetime. It's really infuriating to compare ourselves with others. No matter how much money they make, they are still helping us in the end. Let's start with Zhao Jing. As long as we control Zhao Jing, Yuan Zhengxian will automatically take the bait. After some discussion, the group of gangsters delineated the target and then began to formulate a plan. Xingxing No. 1 High School, in the classroom of Class 10. Although Tan Xiu had been reading, he was in a state of absent-mindedness most of the time. It was not because of the impact of what happened in the morning on him, but because he was thinking about his own money-making plan. Tan Xiu did not stay in the school library and the provincial library for nearly half a month in vain. He had almost read all the books in the library. The only thing Tan Xiu needed to do now was to filter in his mind and match the vast number of elixir formulas in the immortal world with the herbs that existed on Earth. He wanted to see which elixir formulas could be realized on Earth and could bring him huge profits. Chapter 55. Tan Xiu pondered for 2 days and 2 nights, changing the pill formulas in his mind again and again. Finally, he found a few formulas that could be completely realized on Earth. However, the cost of the product, the market after the product was produced, and how to manage and operate the company made Tan Xiu fall into a dilemma. In his previous life, Tan Xiu was used to being alone. Everything was taken care of by his subordinates, so he only needed to do his own things. In this life, not only did Tan Xiu have very few friends, he didn't even have any subordinates. This made Tan Xiu feel helpless. Although Ban's Ho, Ding Zi, and the others could be ordered around by him, Tan Xiu didn't think that those people had the ability to help him manage the company. It seems that I have to find a headhunting company, or take the initiative to look for talents. However, trust is not easy to cultivate. Tan Xiu sighed and continued to write and draw on the paper. In these 2 days, Tan Xiu drew several thick blank notebooks. Later, Tan Xiu felt that drawing notebooks was too wasteful. He even drew all the blank test papers on the desk. "Boss, are you worried about something, or are you worried about the college entrance examination?" Yuan Chuling grabbed Tan Xiu's paper and looked at it. He was confused and asked worriedly, "I'm planning to rob a bank. Do you want to get involved?" Thinking of those rotten ideas that Yuan Chuling gave him to make money quickly, Tan Xiu became angry. Yuan Chuling smiled and then said with concern, "Boss, making money is not something that can be rushed. Apart from robbery and gambling, any other industry is not easy. It requires a lot of accumulation." "I understand. I'm just drawing for fun. You go and study," Tan Xiu said impatiently. He then lowered his head and continued to draw. Suddenly, Tan Xiu felt a dazzling light pass by his face. Tan Xiu couldn't help but frown. If it was an ordinary person, being shaken by a strong light would not be a big deal. After all, it was broad daylight and the sun was scorching outside. It was normal for someone to play with a mirror or open or close a window to reflect the sunlight on their body. However, after Tan Xiu's qi cultivating stage, his senses and divine sense were strengthened countless times. He was like a camera that captured all the scenes within a radius of 100 meters into his mind. Tan Xiu knew that the strong light was the reflection of the sun. The reason why Tan Xiu frowned was because Tan Xiu felt that the direction of the reflection was not right. Because it was early in the morning and Tan Xiu was sitting by the window, the sun shone on his body. In fact, at this time, except for a few students sitting by the window, the students of Class 10 could not enjoy the sunshine. But Tan Xiu was clearly aware that the sunlight was reflected from his position in the west. This made Tan Xiu feel strange. Because at this time there was no sunlight on the west side of the classroom. Moreover, the teaching building was 10 stories high. So many residential buildings on the west side of the teaching building were completely in shadow. It was impossible for the sun to shine on them. His eyes were like lightning. Tan Xiu looked in the direction of the reflection of the sun. Then Tan Xiu saw a very enchanting man looking at the direction of his classroom with a pair of binoculars. Moreover, his gaze was impressively his deskmate, Yuan Chuling. Peeping? Surveillance? Or a coincidence? Tan Xiu instantly became vigilant. His eyes flashed a touch of cold light. Tan Xiu retracted his gaze and continued to draw on the test paper. But from the corner of his eyes, from time to time, he would glance at the movement of the residential building on his right side. Damn, that Tan Xiu didn't discover me, right? Almost at the same time that Tan Xiu discovered the transvestite man, the transvestite man also saw Tan Xiu looking at him. His heart couldn't help but jump, and his mouth involuntarily cried out in alarm. Younger sister, you think too much. Our building is nearly a kilometer away from the teaching building of one middle school. Because you have binoculars, you can see the classroom of class 10. Tan Xiu and the others don't have binoculars, so how can they see us with their naked eyes? The transvestite man's voice had just fallen when he was ridiculed by the frameless glasses man. The transvestite man thought for a moment and found that it seemed to be true. Then, his heart that was hanging in suspense fell to the ground, and he continued to monitor the movement of Tan Xiu and the others. When the transvestite man discovered that Tan Xiu just glanced at his direction, he retracted his gaze and no longer looked in his direction. He subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief, and his face revealed a ridiculing smile. Nowadays, students are really forgetful. Such a big thing happened the day before yesterday, but they already forgot about it today. Each and every one of them is immersed in their studies, as if nothing had happened. Then, how about we let it happen again? The frameless glasses man heavily tapped on the keyboard, and then he took out a mobile phone and directly dialed a number. Almost at the same time that the frameless glasses man dialed the number, Tan Xiu stood up from his seat in the classroom of class 10. Yuan Chuling, Qing Yannan, and the rest of the students were confused as he walked out of the classroom. It was better to take preventive measures than to mend the pen after the sheep is lost. Tan Xiu's eyes were like torches, and his mind was meticulous. If the mob's incident did not happen at school 2 days ago, he might not care about it. But now, he had to raise his spirit to guard against the occurrence of another accident. As the saying goes, there must be a demon behind the abnormal situation. Someone was specifically monitoring the school students through a telescope. Moreover, the target of the monitoring was Yuan Chuling, who had participated in the mob's incident 2 days ago. This made him sure that the other party absolutely did not come with good intentions. Tan Xiu walked along the corridor and came to the office door. He then saw Han Qingwu bending her waist and cleaning the office. Her plump buttocks happened to be aimed at him. Moreover, her slender waist looked extremely flexible. Miss Han, are you busy? Han Qingwu turned around and saw Tan Xiu coming to the office. Although she was somewhat surprised, she still deliberately put on a stern face and pretended to be angry. You're not studying in the classroom. What are you doing here? Tan Xiu had long thought about the wording and said, Miss Han, I don't feel very well. I want to go to the city hospital to have a physical examination. You don't feel well? Han Qingwu's complexion changed. She immediately threw the broom away and trotted a few steps to stand in front of Tan Xiu. She raised her slender jade-like hand and gently stroked Tan Xiu's forehead. 1 second. 10 seconds. Half a minute later, Han Qingwu's face was full of concern as she softly said, Your body temperature is fine. There's no fever. Maybe there's a problem somewhere else. Let's go. I'll take you to the hospital. Tan Xiu hesitated for a moment before he nodded and agreed. He originally wanted to leave by himself and then go to the residential building where the watchers were. However, in order not to alert the enemy, he left the school with Han Qingwu, which should be able to dispel the watchers' suspicions. In the residential building, the frameless glasses man put down his mobile as he heard his companion's soft exclamation. Rolling his eyes, he discontentedly said, Younger sister, don't make a fuss about nothing. We're people who want to do great things, so we must remain calm and indifferent even if Mount Tai collapses in front of us. The transvestite man angrily said, "Bastard. Don't blame me for falling out with you if you call me younger sister again. Hurry up and take a look. That brain-damaged brat came out with a woman. I've observed that woman. She's a teacher of this school, the head teacher of class 10. A glint flashed in the frameless glasses man's eyes. He took the binoculars with one hand and stroked his chin with the other. Then, he said with a smile, "This Tan Xiu is nothing to worry about. He's just a brain-damaged person, so he won't pose much threat to us. This woman, motherfucker. This father has played with a lot of women, but I've never played with such a top-quality one. After this matter is over, I must get my hands on her and play with her for a few days. Then we won't monitor them?" There was a bit of hesitation on the transvestite man's face. He didn't know why, but he felt that the frameless glasses man's words were wrong. Although his brothers believed that Tan Xiu was not a threat to them, but because of Tan Xiu's line of sight, his heart was somewhat tense. The frameless glasses man sneered and said, "What's the point of monitoring a fool? The one we have to keep an eye on now is that Yuan Chuling guy." Alright. The transvestite man shook off the haze in his heart. Outside the school gate, Tan Xiu, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, suddenly said, "Miss Han, stop at the corner of the street ahead. I'm very thirsty. I remember there's a supermarket there, so I want to buy a bottle of water." "I'll help you buy it," Han Qingwu said. Tan Xiu didn't refuse. He also wanted to let Han Qingwu buy it. Only by leaving Han Qingwu's line of sight would he have the opportunity to slip away and sneak into the residential building where the monitors were located. A few minutes later, Tan Xiu smoothly got rid of Han Qingwu and arrived near the residential building. After staying for a while and observing the surrounding environment, he didn't find any abnormalities. Then he hurried up the stairs according to the unit and floor in his memory. Through the observation of his spiritual sense, he clearly saw his targets in a room on the 8th floor. There were two people. One of them was the man he found in the classroom. At the moment, he was holding a pair of binoculars, observing the situation in the opposite school. The other one had a gloomy expression, and his triangular eyes were full of coldness as he typed on the computer keyboard. "Huh." Tan Xiu frowned as a cold light flashed in his eyes. He clearly saw that there was a pistol and two Mitsubishi Army knives on the computer desk. Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and determined the identity of the other party's murderer. If the police wanted to protect the safety of the school, they should have a gun, but it was absolutely impossible for them to carry a Mitsubishi Army knife. In addition, the knife used by the bearded man who committed the crime at the school was the same type of Mitsubishi Army knife. I've determined their identity. Should I call the police? This thought emerged in Tan Xiu's mind, but he immediately threw it out. He was a dignified supreme in the immortal world. Even if his cultivation was not even 1,000th of his former self, he still had the confidence to deal with a few thieves. He made a decision. His agile figure was like a spirit ape as he silently approached the door of the suite. "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."